And that's us live.
Whoa.
Hello and welcome, Mr. Robert Simpson.
Thank you for having me.
Or Rod Thunder, is
Rod Thunder,
otherwise known.
He's been referred to in the past. But thank you for having me.
I know, man, like I've always had an idea that I would have you on at some point.
Cool.
You know, if you just move forward a little bit with your seat, sorry.
There
Just the camera's not the best.
He's
obviously.
on top of the mic. He's in the zone.
We can hear you.
That's good.
How's life in the Big Smoke?
It's
Obviously.
good.
You moved from Dundee to Glasgow, that's
Yeah.
how we know each other.
And that's like 5 years now, so it's quite a
Wow.
kind of rushed in. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. But it's been really good. Obviously, working in guitar in the guitar shop,
Yeah.
which is great. Doing that and been pretty lucky over the course of the 5 years to like start off kind of doing a salesperson's job and then move up as things became available. So managing the shop now and been doing that for 3 years,
Wow.
which is really, really good. And it's, you know, it's interesting. It's dead interesting that, as you know, like when we met, really, I was working in sound control in Dundee, and you know, when I left that job, I thought, can't do this anymore. Can't do this job anymore. But then, like, from going and doing a few other things and going back to that area, you totally get like a lot more from it, and you kind of can appreciate it in a different way, and you know.
And obviously you've went through like several managers doing that type of job. Is it something that when you come to sort of be manager, is it something that you try, like, you know what to avoid and how to treat people, I guess?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think what you're not prepared for is that all the kind of things you're going to have to anticipate other people doing that you're going to have to deal with. Because I think, you know, previously you would see like you look at a manager and go, oh, they're doing, you know, this, I don't agree with the way this is being done, or that's being done, or we should do this differently, we should do that differently. And actually, when you're in the position, there's a lot of balancing of things to be done. You always have a lot of sort of plates spinning. So in that sense, you have to balance things up. But in general, yeah, it's really good. And you know, I've kind of always thought, like through the various jobs I've done, this would be something I would be able to do and do well, whether it was in selling guitars or not. And then, you know, with it being guitars, obviously, I think it's better still, and it plays to a strength.
How is the guitar selling business just now?
Well, it's a bit up in the air, you know. It's kind of strange, because on one side of things, it's always amazed me since I moved to Glasgow and started working at guitar. It's always amazed me how many instruments we sell and how busy the shop is, and the sort of some of the figures that get knocked about, you know, because we do appeal to not only the whole of Scotland. People come and see us from the whole of the UK, and we do a lot of business online, and obviously we've a bunch of shops and stuff. Anyway, I'm not like plugging the shop, but
Guitar.
yeah. But just to repeat that name. But no, crucially, it's good, and it's still really busy, and it keeps us really, really busy. But there are obviously, you know, there's a lot of interesting headlines out there which would make you think
I know.
It's a lot grimmer a story than it is. You know, there's kind of been, you know, there's the thing we can probably get onto first and really get our teeth into is like the Gibson thing.
That's what I wanted to talk about. Because you posted a picture of you with your hat on that said "Make Gibson Great Again," which I thought was an amazing hat.
And shout out to Mark Agnesi, the guy at Norm's Rare Guitars, who came up with, well, he launched the hat, and it's a superb
so
hat.
He's literally like he's actually selling this guitar hat.
Well, what's kind of frustrating is that, you know, I don't want to be one of those guys who says I came up with that idea first.
Right,
but in this case, I literally did have this idea about 18 months ago, after obviously the Trump thing and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, I just think it's really, really funny, and you know, it kind of hints at something which, you know, it kind of hints at a valid point, but also sort of satirizes people saying that kind of thing hysterically, you know, because Gibson,
or people that say it seriously as well, like making America great again, or Gibson, you know,
Gibson, it's kind of equally applicable. And you know, as with anything, there's a lot of shades of grey and a lot of nuance that's kind of missed in these blanket statements.
There's nuance in life? What?
I don't think so. I don't know. I prefer just simple bad good dichotomy is good. So I mean, the Gibson thing is really, really interesting, because you know, the Gibson obviously has been on a bit of a rocky road for a little while, and part of that's been the guitars they've built, which has actually not really been so much of a problem. They had, for anyone who is listening who doesn't know, they brought out like a line of guitars in 2015, which was really an unmitigated failure, because they tried to change far too much about the guitars. at the same time, and a lot of these features were responded to very negatively by the buying public, and I should hasten to add, by the retailers and by everyone who kind of, you know,
over all across the board, just sort of rejected, I guess.
Yeah, but it didn't really work for them. Now, what Gibson did, which was the right thing to do, was in 2016, and for the subsequent model years, of which we're now into 2018, obviously, they totally revamped the line and made them, you know, great again, for want of a better phrase. You know, they started making really, really good guitars, but with the occasional, like, frustrating quality control issue, which weren't as widespread as is sometimes purported. But what they did was they kind of went back to basics on like a 2016 and like a Les Paul standard, went back to just being the spec you'd expect. You know, fair enough, they were weight relieved for anyone who knows what that means. It's still weight relieved, but they kind of abandoned the idea of totally trying to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. Which is good, but they never really put that message out to anyone, which means that...
So the damage was done, really?
The damage is done, and people are kind of in this perception lag where they haven't quite caught up to the fact that Gibson's kind of ditched this, like, this mistake they made, and Gibson himself have not really acknowledged that. So it's a, you know, in that sort of void, kind of a lot of negativity spews forth, and that's kind of what's come past.
Was it a noticeable sort of degradation in quality of them, though? Like, or was it something that was always about certain Gibson guitars? Was it always there, and it just because people have more voice now with the internet that it became sort of more common knowledge, or is it actually just a sort of downward tick in actual quality?
I'm more inclined to think it's what you've alluded to there, which is that because everyone, you know, has their opinion now, and everyone, you know, has access to a lot of information, which is really good, and people can read a lot and they can get other people's opinions much more easily and readily. I think it's more that the perception of the issues grew, because there's something really quite interesting, and I always tell people this story about Gibson, because it's quite an interesting example. Is, you know, obviously, as you know, I was selling guitars and selling Gibsons in like the early 2000s, and like 2002, 2003, 2004, that kind of time. And at that time, the guitars that Gibson were putting out, people were saying, customers, people who came into the store were saying, oh, these are rubbish. You know, they were much better 10 years ago, and like the 90s, you know, obviously. And at that time, it was kind of like, well, is that true? Isn't it true? It's difficult to say, because Gibson's one of those heritage brands, you know, people always want them to be like the old ones were. Yeah. Whereas now people say, oh, those Gibsons from 2002, 2003, 2004, that was a great era for Gibson. But at the time, I remember people trashing them. So it's interesting how people's minds and perceptions change. And, you know, I think that...
It's the good old days.
Yeah, the good old days thing is exactly what it is, you know. And people obviously always want like a 58 or a 59 Les Paul. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, unless you've got a spare 100,000, 200,000 pounds, dollars, whatever you want to...
Have you played guitars that... A lot of people say, well, this is an amazing version of this guitar from way back in the day, and then try to compare it to one that has come out recently, obviously avoiding the few years ago when they tried to reinvent the wheel. But is there a massive difference between an old guitar or Gibson compared to a new one?
Well, what's interesting with like Gibson and Fender, it would have to be said, is they're quite aware of the fact that they're kind of, their market is a bit split. So on one side, they've got to appeal to like the guys who want the heritage thing, and the guys who want an exact replica or something that's exactly as it was. And, you know, 58, 59 for Gibson, maybe for Fender, maybe like a 62, 64, you know, a 52 Tele, these kind of things. And I think they both know that, so they do an interesting thing, which is they kind of split their line two ways, and both Fender and Gibson have a custom shop. And what they pretty much exclusively do in the custom shop is build like time machine type replicas of hallowed guitars. So if you look at, for example, a Gibson, they've got really, really tight on replicating some of the features and really all the key things that make, like, for example, a 59 Les Paul. They can replicate that, you know, at great length and great detail. And they brought out a range that was called the True Historic range, which had like period correct plastics, like molecularly correct, analysed down to that level, like the correct thickness as a headstock veneer. Basically, they'd like x-rayed and kind of in every way assessed an old guitar from like that they kept in the Gibson museum, and then they replicate these guitars on them. And they actually extended that idea far further during the collector's choice phase, which is when they took like particular noted guitarists or collectors and replicated their guitars exactly. So they can get really, really, really close, but I guess what you can never make or manufacture is like the mojo or the story a guitar's had, or any of these kind of things. And with guitar in general, it's a very sort of personal and subjective thing, and I think you and I probably know this as well as anyone, that we could both pick up the same guitar and, you know, I could go, this is terrible, and you could go, this is superb. And that's kind of the way of it. So I think, to come back to my point, Fender and Gibson are kind of aware of this, and they're both kind of trying to push things at slightly more modern direction and bring things in at a price that everyone can sort of not necessarily immediately afford, but certainly get their fingers into. But they're also doing stuff to cater to the guy who really wants the genuine thing from back in the day. And, you know, that's where it starts to become like big money, as you'd imagine. Like a custom shop Les Paul, like a 59 reissue, something that's pretty much a 59 spec, is going to be about £5,000 these days.
That's crazy. Like, what? How come it becomes under that price bracket? Like, what makes it that?
It's kind of, well, there's a number of things, and there is a bunch that goes into it. I mean, obviously, they're using like all their premium materials for a guitar that's at the premium end of the scale. They use all the best bits of mahogany for the bodies and all the highest grade flame maple caps for the tops, all the finest components they can get. That's only really a part of it. The big difference is that with a higher end guitar, there's a lot more hand working goes into it. And because all Gibsons are made in America, it's all American wages they're paying, and as you know, if those go up, then it puts the cost of the guitars up. Obviously inflation kicks in, and the big thing that really sort of stumped the UK guitar market a couple of years ago was that when Brexit not happened, but when the vote for Brexit happened, I'm sure we'll come back to that.
Of course.
There instantly, obviously, the currency, UK currency, was devalued massively. Right. Now, if you're in a store in the UK, which obviously we are, and you know, my business that I work for is, then it means that, you know, if our currency devalues by 20% against the dollar, it means everything we buy costs 20% more, which means that if you continue on, like extrapolate on logically, everything's going to cost the consumer 20% more. Now, and that happened with kind of immediacy, because, you know, in the guitar sector, in the musical instrument sector, you know, people aren't, you know, buying a lot of and stocking a lot of foreign currency in advance to continue to do these deals. They're transferring the money as they need it. So,
and it's already a sector that is seen as sort of like a luxury item to have. You know, like a guitar is not something that every Joe Blogg can buy. You know,
or need. You know, even that's the thing. So, I mean, it is quite interesting. But I mean, guitars do get into that price, but people sometimes get a bit wrapped up in going, you know. And you see this quite a lot on social media and stuff. It's like people going on Gibson's Instagram and complaining that Gibsons are too expensive. It's like, but Gibson actually do make cheaper guitars. Yeah. But, you know, if you want premium features, quality, it's going to kind of come at a premium price. You know, this is for someone who's a professional musician or someone who is at least, that's the level of equipment they want to buy. And, you know, if I want to go and buy a professional road bike, it's going to cost me that amount of money as well, you know. And if you want to go and buy professional, you know, weightlifting equipment, it's going to cost you thousands of pounds. You know what I mean? So like anything when you get to the high end of the spectrum costs money. And actually, you know, Gibson and Fender and stuff historically were never really in the sort of budget market, you know, and that's not really where they're aiming at. So it's a bit peculiar to get bogged down.
Sorry if you just bring yourself in
desiring that. It's a bit peculiar to get bogged down in desiring that, you know, Gibson makes a guitar that's you know, $600, that's going to be great. I mean, it's not. Something's got to give. And
do you think because they're not really a budget type company that they kind of managed to skip the whole sort of mosher, like conforming to like making guitars for quote unquote moshers? You know, there's not, or is it something to do with it's not cool to be a mosher and play a Gibson guitar? You know.
Well, it depends, doesn't it? Because it's like an aspirational guitar. It's kind of when, you know, obviously going back far enough, you can recall not having a good guitar and wondering what it was like to have one and play one. And, you know, these names would be the ones that were kind of at the top of the tree. And I think, you know, it doesn't really make much sense, and it doesn't really, it kind of spoils the allure a little bit if it's dead easy to go out and get like a really, really good Gibson or a really, really good Fender. It kind of, you know, there's other brands that sort of do that now, really.
Is that shifted? Like, is it still Gibson and Fender that are the upper echelons, or is it other guitar brands that are taking that up?
I think a good thing that's come out of, you know, the internet age and again the prevalence of information that people have access to is that these smaller brands can really get a lot better exposure, and they can really get to a bigger market and push the boundaries of what they do in a sort of stronger way, and they can grow faster. So certainly, like, you know, social media and the internet have really pushed the profiles of a lot of brands that would have still been dwindling sort of relatively in obscurity
Yeah.
to this point. So
I couldn't imagine trying to start a guitar company, like a small one, like 10 years ago without all this sort of social media.
I know, well, it's the old thing of like, it would have been word of mouth, and it would have you would have to get them in people's hands and then get people seeing them, playing them, and it's still like that. It's just that the pace at which you can do that is now rapidly accelerated. And you know, there are amazing guitar brands out there that do different things, more innovative things, more modern things, maybe things that Gibson and Fender, etc., would be inhibited from doing because it's not really their interest, and it would alienate their core player base to do. But you know,
what kind of things of
well, I mean, the one that really sticks out for me, which we stock, and I've got one of, such as how I'm impressed I was with them, is a mayonnaise guitar.
Yeah, I've heard you had one of those.
Which
word on the street was
which are amazing, you know. And that's a Polish brand. You don't really think, you think high-end guitar manufacturer, America, maybe Japan. We touch a UK in there if you are being sort of conceited about
Mexico if you're budgeting.
Mexico if you're doing the budget thing. But like, so these Polish guitars that Mayonnaise make are just unbelievable, and they're all handcrafted. You know, they go through a CNC machine, I think twice in the road from being a bit of wood to being a guitar, and it's kind of, in a sense, an old-fashioned family in the business, in the sense that it's a family who run it. It's all in like one location in Gdansk in Poland, and they just make these super high-end, fairly, a lot of them kind of pretty straightforward but just beautifully built, great sounding guitars with all the best stuff on them, you know. And that's a good example. But there's other examples like, you know, Kiesel and Carvin. They've done really amazing since they started kind of pushing the social media thing. And a lot of these brands that are able to push at the fringes of what's possible with a guitar, so doing like fan fretting and like these different tops and beveled edges tops and stuff like that, you know. I mean, if Gibson came out with a double cut with a beveled top with bare knuckles on it, with a through neck, it would just be like the world would probably explode. But yeah, I know.
But you think it's all been done up until this point? You thought like anything that we probably would have seen for a guitar shape has probably been done, and then the internet hits, and then we've just had an explosion of different shapes and, like you say, like different ways of making a guitar as well.
Yeah, and it's like anything in that pool of common knowledge, for better or worse, people are more able to dip into that and take influence from what other people are doing, what's going on around the world in other places, and kind of go, right, okay, that's pretty cool. I wonder if I could maybe put this slant or that slant on it and deviate from there.
There's probably more of a rush towards customization, I guess. Maybe is that people want their own guitars, I guess.
Well, with a lot of these kind of new premium brands, so like Mayonnaise and Sewer is another good example, and Kiesel and Carvin certainly pretty much sell exclusively online. They are pretty much all about the custom route, like pretty much everything that, you know, again, to use Mayonnaise as an example, just because it's one I know, not to say it's particularly better than anything else, but just because it's one I have experience of. If you want to order, if we want to order guitars for stock from them, we can either they do have a couple of stock models, but they still get built for us.
Right.
So in a way, you're better to just
order your own.
Order something that's a little bit unusual or that plugs a gap in the market, you know, and it's something that adds a bit of variance. And a lot of these brands are really keen on people going down that route because it means they get the right thing.
Yeah.
Now that's not without its complications, because obviously what people sometimes do in that situation is they go, right, well, I'm going to get my own guitar, so I'm just going to put everything on it. And that doesn't really work necessarily, you know.
Guitar tuner built in the side.
Yeah, like, you know, one of those like Chaos pads built in, and locking tuners and a Floyd Rose together. And we're just like, right, what's going on? And people wanting like gold hardware on the headstock and chrome on the bridge, and just like, right.
No one wants that.
Well, you'd assume not, wouldn't you? But so there is obviously dangers to that, and the main complication obviously is that, you know, if you wake up of a morning and go, quite fancy getting a new guitar today, I want one that's kind of like that, but kind of like that. Oh, it's going to take 11 months to come. Kind of takes the immediacy out of it. Whereas, you know, what I've tried to do and what we've done certainly is bought some guitars that maybe are ticking a few boxes outside of the spectrum that we have on the wall, that people can come in and go, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. And you think that in at this day and age, that's kind of where you need to be at, really, if you're going to succeed, is you need to have something that draws people in and to the shop, and isn't just like, you know, the wall of Strats is great, the wall of Tellys is great, and don't get me wrong, people love Strats and Tellys, and rightly so, and me among them, But you know, you need to
I
kind
feel
of
like you've warmed up to that in your old age.
definitely. Well, in a way, yeah. But I had a telly, an American telly for a few years when I was younger, and then I had an American Strat for ages as well, and I just sold it, and then I'm back in the.
Was that a Super Strat or?
It was just a Strat with a humbucker in the bridge.
Okay.
But I had that. I still had that when I moved to Glasgow, and I had it for a few years before that. And you know, it's like again, if me and you compared, you were always more of like a Gibson, like a Les Paul kind of guy, and would prefer something that felt and sounded like that. And I've kind of more been on the like Fendery end of the spectrum, you know, that different scale length, and the neck profile's a bit different. It just feels a little bit different sitting next to you. So it just comes down to preference and familiarity. And
but when you do play something like a Gibson and you go to a Strat, it just feels like effortless. Like you feel like it's a heavy thing that's in your hands, and you feel like you're playing something that is made out of wood. But when it's not that that's bad for a Strat. When you play a Strat, it's like complete fluid and effortless. When you've been playing something as heavy as a Gibson. Yeah,
and it's like it's totally different, and the sound's totally different. So when you dig in or you play in a certain way,
it's more responsive. I think Strats sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on like what you want. If you want a clean thing, then certainly you're going to get that like spanky clean sort of sound from the Strat, much ahead of the Gibson, you know. But there's certain sounds that only a Les Paul will give you, and that's why people will always keep buying them, is because if you want that huge sound, then there's nothing that's going to give you that that's not like.
So just to bring it back to Gibson, do you think they're going to go under? Do you think this is going to affect them?
It's basically like stitched, like sewn up at this point, pretty much, that what they're going to do is restructure the company and get rid of all the like dodgy acquisitions they made.
Deadwood, so to speak.
Yeah. But what they did was, you know, they took on a bunch of like high tech companies and stuff, and you know, the wisdom of that would really have to be called into question, and they've now acknowledged that, because that was lumbering them down with a huge amount of debt, which was becoming difficult and expensive to service. Whereas what's interesting, and not everyone kind of knows this, is that, you know, Gibson's guitar making business is like profitable and still successful. Like, fair enough, the guitars have gone up in price a fair amount, but you know, everything goes up in price. When was the last time you looked at like a household goods, an item of household goods, and it got cheaper over the last 10 years? It just doesn't happen.
It's not how
that's just what
inflation
happens.
works.
It's not how like capitalism works at all. Like, everything gets more expensive all the time, and
unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, but the flip side of that is that
your wages increase.
And your the amount that's in your like tax-free income should increase and all that and stuff as well. But
to sort of, if it did come to the sort of, you know, goes into liquidation or anything like that, do you think it would maybe? I mean, it's an American institution. Do you think it would maybe get bailed out somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it definitely would if that were to happen, which I don't think is going to happen at all.
No.
Whatsoever. But I think if that did happen, there would be people who would step in who would see the value in the brand, because it is iconic. You know, it's one of those few brands in our industry that even people who don't play guitar would know what a Gibson was, or would know what a Fender was. You know, but no, what's going to happen basically? It looks like, and again, this isn't insider knowledge. This is just open common knowledge that everyone has, is that they're going to restructure the company under the bankruptcy protection thing, a Chapter 11 thing in America, and that means that they'll be able to press on with the guitar building business, hopefully do that well, do that to, you know, even better than they have been doing it, and they'll not have to worry about servicing this other debt. You know, obviously there are losers in the situation, and you've got to think, well, you know, presumably if they're ditching all these loss-making sides of the business, there's going to be people lose jobs in that sense. Certainly Gibson's made efforts to cut their costs already, and this, you know, as was well documented, they sold one of their they sold a big Memphis factory because it was like...
Is that another main one as well?
Well, no, that's where they make like a lot of the like the 335s, like hollow body models, ESs, that kind of thing, like an ES 275.
Kind of south feeling Les Pauls that you get.
Yeah, like kind of semi hollow body guitars and hollow bodies and stuff. But they closed it because they weren't using half of it, and it had like a big, you know, a bit of, obviously, I think it was the 80s or 90s they opened it, a bit of hubris. They kind of opened this massive facility with this big huge stage and all that, which by all accounts never got used. So now they've kind of gone, well, you know,
Erdig Wee Malmsteen played there.
Back to basics. Imagine that. With
just with the Strat.
Throwing it around his body, kicking people in the face.
This is what I think of your shitty company.
Exactly. So he's it's interesting what'll happen. I mean,
I think under that shutting down, I think a lot of speculation on the internet was that it was on the way out, Gibson, because they'd shut this company, building down essentially.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at it like from the outside, I think that they had it for sale. I don't even know if they successfully got it sold the way they moved to. I mean, if you look at it from the outside, you're right. It doesn't really look very good, does it? It's like company and financial problem, closes massive factory. You think, right, this is going precipitously downhill. But, you know,
if you read between the lines, it's closes company building that it didn't need to have open.
Yeah, it's like downsizing, and it's a fair bit of humble pie. And I should hasten to add that I'm no expert on Gibson's financial position, but I think that there's been a lot of. The main message would be like, I think there's been a lot of talk about the brand, and actually. Not a lot of it's not substantiated, and you know, we see a different side selling the guitars from what people maybe see reading about them online or without having them in their hands. And this is one of the difficulties that, you know, not everyone's got an opinion, but not everyone's really armed with the facts. You know, that would be prerequisite to forming that opinion correctly. I don't think necessarily. So,
sounds like day-to-day life, actually.
Yeah, pretty much. But and you know, if you as I say, if you look at like, I try and avoid doing it because. But if you look at like Gibson guitar social media pages, then it's just like full of guys absolutely tearing them apart and just like going insane, arguing with each other, and it's just right.
I mean, if you're working at one of these places, it must be hard to see that. But when you know differently, you know, you can't be just like, well, I know differently, this company is going to survive. You're still going to fear for your job regardless.
Well,
you know?
yeah, I mean, because there's nothing to say that even if, you know, we're kind of... You could say the company's going to survive. It doesn't really mean that every single person who works for them is going to prosper, and whether they do at the moment, and we don't really know that.
There's people that survived the 2008 crash, you know, from a company, about half the company or 3/4 of it is gone.
And you know, in 2008 there was people that committed like massive gross financial crimes that didn't go to jail for them. So you know, anything can happen. Is the
only one place that did put them in jail was Iceland. Which is. I've got someone coming on actually. He's like a drag what is it, like
drag artist.
Yeah, he like on stage he performs as a drag artist in Iceland.
Right, okay.
Which is kind of like a very like, obviously it's a very macho culture.
Yeah.
But they're also very liberal. So it's like just to see, and he's been there. He's from Switzerland, and he's been there for 5-6 years. So he'll be able to like describe what's happened since that crash.
So he's not Icelandic. So
no,
he's not
Swiss,
like 6'10"
Swiss.
and built like the side of a proverbial. But there's some amazing fact about Iceland, isn't there? That like of the world's strongest men, something like more than a third or 40% of them have been from Iceland, and the population of Iceland is less than the population of Glasgow. It's like insane.
And they probably don't have a lot of external sort of genes coming into the pool. You know, there is going to be a lot of. I mean, I think they have a crisis for people matching up. You know, they have to like, where are they getting the extra DNA from? You know, because it is a small population.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, maybe that's like how you grow, like
breed strong.
This like huge race of monsters, like Hafthor, Bjornsson.
Very strong genes they have. Hafthor, half Magnus, whatever his name. Magnus Magnusson is his name. How did you get started playing guitar? Because I don't think I've ever heard this from you.
I think it was really just a kind of a curiosity when I was like, maybe.
Because you were obviously, sorry to interject, but you're obviously academic.
Yeah.
And
yeah, but this was kind of, I guess, before you would really know that. You know, when you're like 13 or 14, do you really know if you're that academic or not? You know, you don't really know what you're gonna.
Just don't even know you're human sometimes. You're
well, you kind of, everyone's a bit of a blur at that point. But just kind of out of a curiosity, you know, thought, well, I'd seen someone. Playing guitar, and thought, you know, well, that looks, you know, maybe I could give that a go. And you know, before that, I think everyone, certainly in Scotland, not everyone, I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of, you know, wee boys' goal when you're young in Scotland is to be a footballer. And I think, you know, I certainly, when I was really young, had that aspiration.
Really?
And then, you know, when you realise that you're absolutely terrible at that, for whatever reason, you go, right, okay, well, that's kind of out the window now. And, you know, when I started playing guitar, by contrast, I found that it was something that not only did I enjoy doing it, but also I was quite good at it. And it was probably the first thing that I'd kind of, you know, being able to get to grips with, that I could do well, that I also enjoyed doing. That there's other things I could probably do well that I found that I grudged to do. You know, maybe for example, like doing maths at primary school would be one of those things. But so when I got into playing guitar, I just kind of got the bug for it. And then,
did you preemptively start it, or was there like a band or a piece of music that you heard that you thought, I want to replicate that?
No, I kind of probably got into more the kind of arse over tit kind of way, like the wrong way around, in that I got into sort of the idea of playing guitar and sort of faffing around with a guitar.
I think that is for a lot of young boys though, when they see it. It's not the music, it's the seeing someone with a guitar.
Yeah, and playing and going like, this is cool, and you know, you give it a go, and then when you get into the environment when you're around like other people playing guitar and they're talking about bands that they like, and you know, people that you know you kind of are interested in, and that's where your musical taste and your guitar playing taste starts to come from, really. And obviously I started, you know, I went to, such was my interest in it that I started doing work experience in sound control, aforementioned, when I was 15. And then from there, obviously I was around like a lot of musicians and like talented people and guys who...
And generally the people that are employed in those positions are people who are great musicians, you know, in order to sell, well, not all the time, but in order to back up what you're saying, a lot of those people can play the guitar and whatever instrument they're trying to sell as well. Yeah,
and at the very least they know and they have some interest, sort of, whether it's very much at the forefront of what they do or it's sort of a residual interest, but they have some interest and knowledge of music, and you know, you pick up from them, you know, what guitarists are, you know, interested in, what guitarists are pushing the boundaries, and what guitarists have kind of left a legacy for you to sort of consider. So that's kind of how I got into that. And then, you know, really from when I was like probably 15 to 18 was when I really strongly got into like practicing a lot and spending like all my free time like sitting just playing scales and just messing about with stuff like that.
Were you one to use a metronome at that point, or was it?
Yeah.
Because that's always the one they say, if you're going to become a shredder, you have to use the metronome.
Well, a large amount of it's like mechanics, isn't it? Like you need to just get used to your hands moving in the way they are, and then it's muscle memory from there. And you know, I would have to say, you know, I never really got any lessons, but I did get, you know, maybe 10 or 12 lessons from a guy called Rob, who was a tutor in sound control upstairs. And like
so you're pretty much self-taught.
Pretty much, but
with the
exception of these lessons that I got from Big Rob, who was like amazing and really inspirational, and just a really, really nice guy with it. And that totally like booted me up the arse to go, right, because he would basically say, like, you know, these things you're doing wrong, you shouldn't do it like that, you should do this. He introduced me to like doing finger per fret and scales and how all the modes link up, and from there you start to go, right, wow, now I'm getting like precipitously better at this. Like you've gone from, I always say to people in the shop, like playing guitar, the starting bit is the hardest bit because it feels impossible, and then once you get into it, if you apply yourself and you put the time into it, you'll get precipitously better at it, and better and better and better at an exponential rate if you focus on it. And certainly that's what I found, is that when I had the time and made the time to practice a lot and commit myself to playing, I would get a lot better and would learn some of the rudimentary stuff that you would use later. And indeed, the people who become, you know, amazing musicians and world-class musicians and really get to the top of their game just don't let up at that. They just keep going and keep going and keep going, and they make time to play and practice and engage. And
I guess a lot of guitarists that are in bands like, you know, pop bands and semi-rock bands that are around nowadays, they probably get to a point where they're just competent enough, and then they're happy with that, I guess. But obviously when you want to be competent at your instrument, that it's something that never ends. You always have to progress and keep going. But a lot of people just stop short of getting anywhere, I guess. Well,
it's interesting because, you know, guys like, I'll give you the example of the guys from Sam Smith's band were in the shop not so long ago, right? Obviously, Sam Smith, massive pop artist. And see, these guys, they only go out with like the best guys available. Like Sam Smith's band are like unreal. And the two guitar players were in the shop, obviously playing, and I would have to hasten to add, really, really nice guys, but just super musicians, just loads of chops. You know, they could just play, you know, a good range of styles. And then the keyboard player guy was in, and he was playing guitar, and he was probably a better guitarist than I am. And he's a keyboard player, and I was just like, but that's like, I think when you get to the level, if you want to be out with these guys who are playing like with pop bands, you know, Justin Timberlake's band's another great example. All the guys that are in these bands are like world class. They don't play anything complicated, or they don't really display
their ability,
the full extent of what they're capable of, but they're like competent to the nth degree. Like they can be relied upon to play the same thing with panache and style over and over and over
and cover any sort of genre as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And be able to be competently good at it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it Jamiroquai notoriously has an amazing backing band as well?
Well, it's always the bass players in Jamiroquai. It's always just like guys just with thumbs the size of...
Yeah. Do you know who was really good back in the day? I don't know if it's the same people, and I hate saying this because it was Pop Idol. Was it Pop Idol that had the backing band as well?
Right, okay. What was it though?
One of them,
was,
one of the American ones, and the session band were just phenomenal, just tight, just not one white guy in the band, you know, just like.
Well, they don't want guys to be dropping clangers on live TV, do they? And like looking around at each other, shouting, "No, it was 6, not 4." So I mean, these guys are like the height of competence, and they're kind of professional in every regard. You know, it's their job, and they know that they have to dial in. I'm sure they do their own things to kind of sate their other musical appetite on the side, but
generally it's because they love music, because it's not a position to be in where you're going to become famous. Sometimes it's not, you are going to be in the limelight slightly, but not in the same way that you probably would want to if you were in a band, you're in your own band. And so it's a passion thing for music, and it translates, you know.
Definitely. And I think like if you're going to play music as well, there's a really important point that took me quite a long time to realise, is that if you're going to play music, you better resign yourself pretty quick to the fact that you're not going to be able to do it as your job. Do you know what I mean? Unless you are a superb musician and you're really, really lucky and in the right place at the right time and you know the right people and you get a break, you're probably not going to do that as a job. So you better, if you're going to write and play music, you better do something you enjoy, because that's all you're going to get from it. The act of making the music is going to have to be enough for you, basically. If you're going into it thinking, I'm going to make money from doing this, then you're onto hiding to nothing already. And I think actually you can tell people who do things for us and who make music for a sincere and honest reason, you can tell that in how it comes off. And those are probably the people that will be successful. Whereas if you cynically chase becoming famous, especially like writing your own music and being in like a band, that is impossible.
Well, it's probably going to be the least amount of fame you'll ever get. I mean, we all know the pop stars, even Beyonce, she's regarded as Queen Bee, but doesn't write her own songs. You know, it's something that people love, that she's revered, but doesn't write her own songs. You know, and that's something that's popular now.
Whereas that's like a personality thing as well, isn't it? Because people...
She doesn't have a personality. Have you ever heard her speak?
I don't matter. I'd love to, I have to say.
But she doesn't speak. I think that is a marketing ploy. Is it Frank Ocean as well? You never ever hear him talk that much, because I think they're both supposed to be quite dull.
Aloof.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And there's a marketing ploy where they just don't let them speak in public.
Right.
I mean, I've never seen Beyonce speak in an interview past when she was in Destiny's Child.
Maybe she needs to conserve her vocal cords.
Maybe, yeah. Like,
it's like if you're out doing these 3-hour shows every single night and all those high notes, you know, fair play to you. Don't be doing any talking during the day.
This is something that I've always found with guitar shops, and it's obviously something you'll know about. But why is there always a clash between the people that come in to buy the type of guitar and the people that work there? You know,
it's interesting, isn't it? And this is actually, I'm really glad you asked that, because this is something I have kind of, I'm acutely aware of, and for us it's something we really try and challenge a lot, to the point where I say it to people coming into the shop is like, you know, we're trying to create and see what you imagine a guitar shop to be. We're trying to do the opposite. And I'm not saying that we're there yet, because I'm sure there's instances where we're not, but I think you're right that the stereotype is almost like the high fidelity kind of like, you go in, there's a bunch of guys, like typically white guys standing behind the counter, arms crossed, staring at you, unhappy to serve you, don't really seem to be there, don't really seem to enjoy their life, don't really know what's in it for them. And that is very much the stereotype, and it's kind of, well, can I try this guitar? Well, not really, you know. And that was prevalent and permeated, you know, certainly at every guitar shop I've ever been in, really. So, you know, and I think you need to be reasonable and rational and say that, you know, in 2018, there's a lot of ways for people to buy stuff. And if you want people to come into your shop and give you their money, and often quite a lot of their money for the guitars you're selling, you better give them some reason to come in. And they're not going to come in if you're contemptuous towards them, and they're not going to come in if you're rude to them, and they're not going to come in even if you're disinterested. And the point I try and make to all the guys that work for us is that, you know, even if you can't bring some added value to the interaction with them, what reason does someone really have to come in?
Yeah.
You know, if someone knows when they come in that they're going to speak to someone who's going to be like friendly to them, help them out, help them find the right thing, and maybe tell them something they didn't know before, because I think it is a bit of a black art, you know, guitar playing and setting up a pedal board, for example, or setting up your amp, you know, and anything that we sell, there's quite a lot of sort of hidden knowledge to it that you maybe wouldn't know, and you could read all the forums you wanted to, and you could talk to all the experts you wanted to about it, but really the proof's in the pudding. And if you come into the shop where we've got everything and we can demonstrate it to you, then the person's really gonna, you know, to my mind, most people would go, oh, that's really good, I didn't know that, but that guy showed me how that works, I must remember to go back there. So, you know, I think it, you know, is a big point. I don't know why it kind of became that way. I think it's like because typically a lot of guys who worked in guitar shops were just frustrated, better musicians who were annoyed that they weren't out, you know,
or don't have
shagging
money
hookers or you know, or whatever. Yeah. Exactly.
Do you think because you worked selling like at the phone warehouse, do you think that's something that's maybe came into you selling guitars now? It's a part where you have to give people respect that you're trying to deal with as well. Definitely.
I mean, I think, you know, that was something that when I started at Guitar really served me really, really well, was the fact that I'd worked in another environment, in a different customer service environment, and often in a worse one, because, you know, people go nuts about their phones. If they don't have a phone they can use, like
I want to get that on a t-shirt.
They go feral. Like it's insane, and you know, it's almost something. It's hard to get excited about a mobile phone, particularly. You know, some people do, but it's hard for me to get passionate about you know, talking about like the new Nokia smartphone or whatever. But you know, it's easy for me to get excited and passionate about talking about a guitar or talking about the sound of a guitar or a musician or anything like that. So I think it gave me a different perspective when I came back, but also it gave me a different set of, you know, to use the sort of Brian Mills from Taking, a particular set of skills, which were quite useful, you know.
Nice.
And let me apply them to this environment. And you know, and I always kind of joke with people and say, like, you know, music industry retail is sort of like 10 years behind the rest of retail in terms of like everything, the way it's run, and like people's attitudes and the way the like your distributors are and everything. It's nuts, and it's a very idiosyncratic sector of retail. So you know, we've kind of done quite well with bringing in some like sort of dead boring stuff, like just how the shop runs and how we deal with the customers and how we find out what the customers thought and how we deal with issues, and making sure that we kind of dot the I's and cross the T's. And you know, it's not exciting stuff, it's just functional stuff, but ultimately it comes down to, if you treat people well and with respect, they're going to value some of what you've given them. And if you are explicit in saying, you know, listen, thank you for coming in, and please, if you've got a problem, don't go and Google it, come and speak to me about it, and you know, we're going to see you right, because ultimately, you know, there is a certain dying art in the sense that if you go into a shop and you buy something and it's, you know, it's not right or it doesn't work as it should be able to go back to that person who sold you and say, look, is this right? Should this be doing this? And that person should steer you right. And if they don't, then your next thought is going to be, well, I won't do that again. I'll go and buy it online now. And you know, that might work for a lot of things. It might even work for clothes and trainers and all that sort of thing. It might not, and in certain cases it won't. But for guitars, it seems really peculiar, because you know, it's something that, you know, you could take 5 Fender Strats that are meant to be the same, line them all up next to each other, they'll all feel and sound different. And I think as long as that's the case, there's going to be a value for people coming in.
And there's going to be a bunch of people that have played that whatever guitar on the shelf before you, and it might show some, you know, irregularities or something that's kind of quirky about it, that then someone that's worked in the shop can express that to someone that's buying it, you know. And that's, I think in the guitar industry, it's going to be harder to get rid of that one-on-one-ness, you know, whereas the internet, it's hard. Like, you buy a guitar, you don't know if this is going to be set up right at all when you receive it, and you don't know how it's supposed to sound either if you've never played something like this.
And you don't know how it's meant to be set up either. You know, you could get, and I would have done this as well when I was younger, I would have got a guitar that was badly set up and gone, oh, this guitar's a piece of shit. And actually, it wouldn't have been a piece of shit at all. It just maybe wouldn't have had the strings stretched, or it wouldn't have had the action set up properly on it. And again, these are all things that requires like a human being to do, and not to do it just once when it leaves the factory, but to do it, you know, before the person who's taking it away takes it away, and then sometimes after, because you know, wood is malleable and it moves, and if you put like 180 pounds of pressure on the top of an acoustic guitar with the strings, bits of that guitar are going to move naturally, and the way the guitar plays is a like finely balanced pivot, really. And if that slips slightly, it's either going to not play as good, or it's going to play really well but it's going to buzz, or any of these kind of things, you know. And these are the things that we iron out.
Is the condition of the guitars when they arrive at your place, is that indicative of the company? Like, is that something you can tell, like, oh, this is a good company because they're sending the guitars in this condition?
No, normally, condition's one thing and sort of setup's another. You know, if a guitar arrives with a lot of flaws and QC problems and stuff, then, you know, that is a problem, because then you have to, you know, we wouldn't put something like that out normally without getting money back from the supplier and then passing that on to the customer. But the setup and stuff is much thornier, because, you know, if a guitar's set up in Southern California to play correctly in Southern California, then by the time it gets to the UK and the temperature's 12 degrees different, the humidity is completely different, the neck of the guitar is just naturally going to have moved a little bit, and that could mean that the guitar now plays terribly. And that's not really Fender's fault. You know, it's Fender's fault for sending guitars all over the world, being a victim of their own success, but it's also just you know, an inherent part of this guitar, which is something that is a bunch of effectively moving parts. Like, a guitar has quite a lot to it to make it play the way it does. It's not just a case of getting a bit of wood for the neck and a bit of wood for the body, bolting them together and slapping some string. Yeah, there's a lot more to it to make it play properly.
There's a great YouTube series where a guy takes, like, I think it's like an eBay or an Amazon Strat-like guitar, and then he plays it beforehand, and it's like complete dog shit, and then he does as much as he can to it to make it sound good, like new strings, and reset it, and like, I don't know, spray something on it, and it does eventually sound pretty good. But I mean, how long will it stay like that?
Well, and it's like, you know, what's the old expression? You can't polish a turd. And like, you know, also the other thing, if you do, you maybe can polish it a bit, but you'll get shit all over your hands. It's the other problem. So, do you actually want to do that? Yeah, I really don't know. But you know, it's something that it does require a human interaction with, and you know, something where I always give the example of, like, going into, I used it earlier, but going into like a bike shop, right? So I'm a very, 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 very amateur level cyclist, right? So I've got a bike and I used to ride it to work quite a lot and stuff.
Does it have gears by any chance?
No, it's non-gear. Easy now.
Now we're talking.
I know. So it's just a dead simple one-speed bike, right? So you think, well, there's not much can go wrong with that. But then when you go into the bike shop, and if you go into a good bike, and I've been into good bike shops and bad bike shops, if you go into a good one, they sort of demystify some of the dark art of what is going on with this bike. And if you go into a bad one, they kind of glower at you like you're an idiot for not knowing. It's like, well, how am I supposed to know? I'm not a professional. You're the bike person. It's like kind of going, like, you're the bike doctor, I'm the bike patient. I want you to fix this bike, you know. And the guitar's kind of the same thing. It's like, we have to be, maybe not the guitar doctor's a bit extreme, but we have to be able to impart some knowledge to people to make them see, right, I do want to buy a guitar from this person, and more importantly, you know, I want to come back and see this person again in the future, and I want this to be a place that, you know, I would feel comfortable coming into, and so on and so forth.
So, just to lead it on to, like, we grew up playing metal, like that was the thing, and you know, you were more into the sort of 80s hair metal type of thing, and I've seen a lot of people speaking online about how they find sort of any genre of metal now boring, because there's a trend where all the guitars sound the same, and the sort of the rhythm is all the same as well, and I mean, I would have to agree with, like, what they're saying now. Like, there seems to be a lack of different sound in metal at the moment.
So you mean, like, what bands all kind of sound like
Sound like an old guy, like, you know, like,
Do you mean like,
oh, these bands sound.
do you mean like gent kind of stuff? Do you mean like everyone sounds
like
like
the
Periphery?
tone, yeah, like the guitar tone and the rhythm and the sort of double kick and everything's polished so well. And
Well, it's the magic of Pro Tools and the you know how what's the word I'm looking for? You know how dominant that is and how much people use that, and you know people can record really well at home as well, and they can use like Kemper or Axe Effects or models of the above, or like plugins and stuff to get a really tight kind of polished sound. And I think generally that's a really good thing. So if you can get like a studio quality guitar sound at home, then that's totally amazing. It does take away some of the fun of like trying to work out is this Boss Metal Zone into this JCM 800 gonna sound good, and you know often the answer that would
the
be
death metal one. What was it? The Boss one. The
an HM2.
They had the death metal pedal, which was what all the black metal artists used. What was it?
It's an HM2, isn't it? Yeah. Which is just a
terrible.
heavy metal. But like that's like the Gothenburg sound, isn't it, as well? Like all those kind of guys use that as well. But you know, you're probably right to a certain extent, but I think metal's quite fractured, isn't it? Like there's a lot of different like sub genres and different stuff going on. You know, we would have to admit that a lot of I'm kind of out of the loop of. Having said that, I did listen to the new the Faceless album, which is actually very, very good. Really, really good. And it's got an excellent Depeche Mode cover on it as well, which appeals to me.
Of course. Did you listen to that first?
No, I listened to the whole thing because there's a guy that works with me who's like really, like the Faceless is his favourite band, so I kind of thought, well, I'll give this a spin for old time's sake. I listened to, the last Faceless thing I listened to was Planetary Duality.
1 and 2.
Yeah. Which was like,
so you have to listen to it.
But now, you know, they've got this new record and it's really, really good. But I think, you know, a lot of these bands, you know, we had Misha from Periphery in the shop, and he was like an interesting guy. He was doing a clinic and he was just talking about, you know, how he got into making their music and talking a little bit more on the side of like how he makes a living out of doing it. He says like Periphery, even though they're a huge band, they don't really make.
He's in a few other bands, isn't he?
Is he though? I mean, does he not guest on stuff? But he kind of just writes for them, I think.
Okay.
But he's just got hundreds of endorsements. Like, it just seems like he kind of said, you know, anyone who wants to endorse me, I will work with, because it's a way of making like
money. Yeah.
It's a way of keeping, you know, his business going, which, you know, makes sense to me.
Which is him, really.
Yeah, his business is him. Yeah, exactly. And like again, this is another thing that these guys in the era of the internet can do, and you see it in the world of, you know, the two worlds that I'm interested in that I see it in is like the world of guitar playing, where like, you know, Misha Mansour and, you know, Aaron Marshall from Intervals, who's another guy who I have in the shop, and Pliny and stuff. They all managed to, like, they're doing their music thing, and that's kind of all they do. But because of where they're at on social media, they can be doing like lessons, Skype lessons, and their shows are busy, and they sell merch and they sell CDs, vinyls, etc. online, and they're able to really expand their profile hugely through that. And you know, the other area you see that in, which I follow and I'm interested in, is like in the bodybuilding's a bit strong, but in that kind of area, you know, like Callum
like
Von
YouTube,
Moger and Sari
fitness
Kadzovich, and Jeff Nippard and all these kind of guys, you know.
The guy Athlete X, what's his name? Do you know him?
Yeah, that pure.
He's the best one. His videos are amazing.
They're like super detailed. Yeah, they're really, really good. And
like
he shouts
he's
at the
very
camera
autistic. And he's supposedly 100%. I've not said this word out loud before, but natty. He's 100% natty, which means natural, obviously. Yeah, it's a huge thing. I'm into, like, I watch a lot of that. Like, Athlete X is the one I go to if I'm doing something that I feel maybe is not comfortable. It doesn't feel like it's safe. Like like chest flies. Like, I've changed from that because it's not something that's like, it puts a lot of stress on your shoulders.
You feel like your ribcage is ripping apart.
And if you want to use a different exercise, he tends to have an alternative for it, which is just as good, if not better as well. And he's super informed as well.
Well, I think it's good when these guys break down like a bit of the science behind what they're saying. So rather than just the pure bro science of smash these and then eat this and then, you know, take a load of trend, you'll be fine.
Is it good though? Because the whole art of producing content is to be able to take all the information and make it accessible. And if you're using all these massive words, like, a lot of the time they don't need to be like anterior and you know, like it just sounds like you're saying it to say it, as opposed to. But is that what professionalism is amongst that, or is it just to be able to take that information and then put it in a way that's digestible for people?
I think it's probably more that, like, if you can point to the evidence that backs up what you're saying, especially in like the world of, you know, anything to do with weight training, anything to do with bodybuilding is very much like, you know, there's people saying 100 million different things as to what's good, what works, what's effective, etc. So if you can, you know, some of these guys, you know, I mentioned it earlier, Jeff Nippard, he's really interesting because he, you know, backs up everything. You know, this study from the University of Toronto said this. This study
Is
from
that
the university.
quite the thin guy?
No, he's like a wee small, dead broad guy, classic sort of guy for that kind of that kind of area. Wee Canadian guy.
I think there's a leaning towards backing everything up by science now.
Yeah.
Which can be done anyway because there is various studies out there that can prove anything, and statistics are notoriously easy just to show up, and it can back up anything really. But like there is a push to try and make it backed by science when it comes to these type of things. Which is good because it's long gone. Well, not long gone. There are still some bro science guys out there. Are you still working out? Is that something? Because I remember you started to get into it. How old are you when you started to get like into proper?
I would probably say I started going to the gym when I was like 21 or 22, but I would probably put down the first few years of that as really faffing around and kind of not really knowing what you're doing and not really committing to it properly. And I would say that definitely when I moved to Glasgow and thereafter, I really kind of got into it a bit more like thoroughly and started going consistently and working on like a proper routine and mixing my routine up and doing like more recently in the last couple of years, like doing a bit of like bulk and cut and actually trying to like attack it and tap into the knowledge of other people and say like, you know, try and get your diet sussed out and all that kind of thing. And I think with that as well, there's a few realizations you come to like throughout your training is, you know, one day you just realize, right, this isn't going to be a quick thing. You shouldn't get disheartened, and actually you're going to hit a lot of points where it feels like you're getting nowhere in terms of either how you look or how you feel or what you're moving, like what you're shifting. But actually when
sorry, just to tie it into guitar, it's funny how someone who's like as competent as you are on the guitar and how long it's taken you to get to that point, that still when you come to something else, like everyone's done it. You know, I've done it as well when I'm just like, this is not going to be overnight. Eventually you realize that, but it is something you have to learn every time you go to something like that and do it from start. And I think the quicker you start to think this is going to be a long-term thing, then the quicker you can plan better for it, I guess. Yeah,
and like the quicker you get into the mindset of, right, well, I better make sure I'm doing everything here correctly, and I mean like doing the exercises correctly with the correct form, but also, you know, your nutrition, getting that right, getting how much you're training correct, all these kind of things, and working it out. The other thing you've got to think about when you're talking about training is you've got to think about your own personal like body type and the way that you live your life and all the things that you do as part of that.
I mean, you were probably like a hard gainer, like seriously hard gainer.
Very, very much so, and still, you know, still am like a really, really like kind of skinny and narrow shouldered and all that, and it takes a long, long time for you to even notice
get like a base level of muscle.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I saw pictures of you like a couple of years now, and I was like, Bobby's getting thick. You know, like that's insane to see, because I remember you was just like, I mean, you didn't look effeminate, but you were masculine, but you were really like thin as well. And how you imagine someone that's as proficient at guitar that you would look like at that age, you know, all those nights spent inside playing guitar.
Spent shredding, tugging, exactly.
But it's good to see you like actually filling out the way that you've obviously wanted to from the start. Yeah,
and it's like, it's a particular challenge because you have to think about, right, you don't realise how much you're going to have to eat, like, in order to see if you want to, like, if you're quite tall and thin and you're lifting weights and all that, you know, the amount you're going to have to eat, especially if you're on your feet for your job every day. So, like, you think, right, okay, well, I'll eat a bit of this, you know, chicken, eat a bit of that, blah, blah. And you kind of, again, you sort of faff around at the edges and kind of, well, this isn't really working. What do I need to do?
You don't commit to what you're trying to do. Sometimes, especially with nutrition, it's like, oh, I'll go and do this and that.
Yeah, and you kind of think, well, I've heard that's good and I've heard that's good, so I'll throw them together and that'll work.
And then you end up never doing anything because you're just doing bits of everything.
Yeah, and you feel like a bag of shit as well, and you're like, right, okay, so I'm training, I'm not noticing any differences, and I feel terrible, so that's good. Yeah. But actually, you know, it was really helpful. My mate Sean is like a nutrition qualified nutritionist, so he like sorted me out with, look, here's what, if you want to gain, right, you need to eat more calories than you burn, right? So here's what you're burning, you know, based on what you've told me, and here's what you need to eat to go over that and be in a surplus every day. And I was like, So then you have to just get it into the mindset of going, and you know, this is one thing I think I'm quite good at, is going, right,
Yeah.
you're going to do this thing now, so let's fucking do it. Like, if you're told, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to apply yourself to do, then just go and do that. So did that for a bit, and that was probably only last year, or maybe the start of the year before, and that was when I noticed like a big difference. And week on week, you'd go back and be like, right, I feel stronger. And then after 6 months, you would look and go, right, okay, I look different now. You know, and your proportions would be going in the ways you wanted to. And so then what we've been doing more recently is he gave me a diet to go the opposite way and cut and see if you could shed some of that fat. So I put on like 5 or 6 kilos, of which probably most was muscle, but obviously there's a bit of like fat and all that comes in. And then we've done a cut and like got down to, so far we're still like
what are you sitting at weight wise?
83 kilos, but 9.4% body fat, so that's good. I think I'm quite happy with that.
That's awesome.
I think there's a bit more to go in that sense. And you know, I think we all know, you know, realistically, unless you're going to quit your job and train twice a day and eat a ton and probably inject your body with anabolic steroids and the correct dose, then you're probably not going to, you know, there's going to be limits on what you can achieve realistically. So I always say this to people as well, and you know, you'll know this much better than me from someone who's trained more and for a lot longer, is that the main benefit really to like training is that like you feel a lot better mentally, and like the mental focus you get from it and the sense of achievement is really the big huge benefit that actually comes from it. It's not so much, you know, it is good being able to look at yourself making progress in a physical way and go, that's really, really good. I'm proud of that and I'm pleased with that and I want that to continue. But actually the main thing is like when you come out of the gym in the morning, you go, right, I feel great now and I'm ready for the day ahead and I've done something before I've even done anything with the day. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, that is something it ties in directly to training. I think once you get over the first couple of months where it's terrible, you feel even dreadful coming out the gym because you've just worked your ass off and you're not used to it. But once you become accustomed to it and you start to like push yourself further and you know the feeling of, this feels like shit, but I'll go harder. And once you've accomplished that and you come out the gym, you just feel like $1 million. And even if you don't want to go to the gym, like I always say this, there's been days where I've worked hard all day, I come back and then I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym, but I know if I put my shorts on that I'm going to the gym.
If you, as soon as you walk out the door and you're on route, exactly.
And that's so important. Like one of the things that's helped me is doing cold showers. That's like made my focus so lasered in and tightened in. Is just taking like there's loads of science behind it. It's like it's a legit thing, but basically I take like a normal shower and then for the last couple of minutes I'll have a cold shower and then you release loads of endorphins and it makes you focused as well. And I find that there's days that it seems colder than others, but it's not.
Is this before you go or after you go?
To the gym.
Before
or after.
Oh, just
like,
any time?
Yeah, like I shower like sometimes twice a day.
So just any time you go in the shower, make the last bit cold, 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Like I've worked my way up there. Like I started at 15 seconds and I was like, this is fucking dreadful. But the focus and the rush you get from it is amazing because you know, if I can put my head under this freezing water that I don't want to put my head under for 15 seconds, I can go to the gym when I don't feel like it. There's like a correlation to that and decisions in your day-to-day life that you're like, well, I've challenged myself this morning with that. This is nothing.
Yeah, definitely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it's like anything, it's kind of perspective, isn't it? You know, I think a lot of people are maybe like this from who I've spoke to, but I think it's easy to like kind of convince yourself out of doing stuff and go, right, I should really go and do this thing. Yeah, but what if this really bad worst case scenario of what might happen? What if that happens? Yeah, you're right. You shouldn't go and do that. But it's actually that's the wrong attitude because what happens is you go, right, I should go and do this thing. No, you shouldn't because what if this happens? Well, no, but what if the opposite happens and it's really, really good and it's positive and then something good comes from it? And actually when you make those jumps, particularly with reference to big decisions, normally they tend to come off because you've kind of gone, right, well, I'm doing this and I know of the challenges it's going to present me. I know what's going to be hard about it and I know where it could end up if it goes really badly. So I better make sure I focus all my effort and energy and all my mindset into making sure that doesn't happen. You know, and obviously there are certain things that are out of your control, but probably less than you would imagine. I would think there's probably less things that you encounter in your day-to-day life that are out of your control than you would be inclined to think, you know. And the worst,
I mean, your imagination's a scary place, you know, and it can imagine all sorts of stuff and put you off from doing just the simplest of tasks. I mean, this is something I talked about in the last podcast, like the mental health has come up in the news a lot recently, but because of is it Scott Hutchison from Frightened Rabbit, and this is something.
Horrible story.
This is something that's, I think, has come up more in my group of male friends now, because it is something that people are trying to become aware of and recognize with their friends, that it is something that affects everyone, you know, and and it's been highlighted by these type of things happening, you know. And is it something that you've ever had to deal with, or someone in your life that's?
Well, I think it's interesting, because it is really something that's on the tip of everyone's tongue right now, isn't it? Almost, it's like everyone's talking about like mental health, and I think what they mean by that is like people's mental well-being, the bits you don't see, which I think
it's probably a better way of putting it, actually, like making making sure that your mental well-being is there, as opposed to like mental health is a bit more sort of like a sort of medical issue, I guess. Yeah,
and I think that there is a bit of a blurring of the lines there, because I think, you know, you can be unhappy in your life, and you can be doubtful and fearful of all bad things that might happen to you, and you can even feel trapped and feel, you know, really, really in a negative place. But does that, you know, is that a mental health issue? Like, do you have a mental health problem, or are you just undergoing a bit of a difficult time? And I think that, you know, there's a question to be asked as to whether that's the case. But
should it matter though? Like, if we're still acknowledging that it's something that people experience every day, whether it's being or health, is it something that we should still be open about?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one thing that one good thing that people are saying a lot is that, like, people shouldn't be afraid to talk about if they don't feel right in their head, and that's definitely true. And I think that, you know, there is, and I'm not going to say it's linked to like masculinity, but certainly there is a bit of a culture of, you know, stiff upper lip. If you don't feel good,
well, it's a working class mentality.
Get over it. You know, you'll be fine. And I think that if you can say, you know, if you can go to someone and say, listen, we're friends, I feel terrible, here's what's going through my head at the moment, I'm really struggling with this, and will you listen to it, and will you have some understanding of it? That's a good precedent to set. I think where it gets a bit murkier is if you go, you know, if everyone goes, oh well, everyone, you know, has got some mental health issue, you know, you've got to be really, really aware of that at all times. You know, I think another thing is that, you know, not everyone's
could that be reflective of society though?
Yeah, but, you know, you shouldn't convince yourself that you have a really serious mental health problem if you don't. I mean, the guy from Frightened Rabbit, that is horrible. Like, an absolute horrible situation. A guy who was really well thought of, successful, obviously just had demons, like was really, really obviously troubled in his life, and that's really, really bad. And it's horrible that he had to actually, given he'd kind of warned about it, like written songs effectively about it, that he felt that was the only thing he could do, and obviously that is grim. And, you know, suicide is the main, as everyone keeps saying, is the main killer of men under 45, and it's the number one killer of men under 45, and that's horrible. And is there a reason? Like, what is the reason for that? Like, what do we think the reason for that is? Is it that, you know, is it that they say, you know, as you hear people say, you know, men suppress their feelings, they don't talk about them, they bottle them up, it gets lost in, like, into frustration and anger, hate themselves, so on and so forth? Is it that people don't know what their role in the world is anymore? Is it what Russell Brand says, which is that, you know, are people deeply dissatisfied with living in a materialistic culture? You know, this is his kind of avenue. Or is it just that people don't feel like they have...
Or coming from the background that he's in, like music, a creative sort of artistic world, is going to bring someone who's chosen not to lead a conventional life. And there's going to be some sort of downsides to that as well. You know, you're going to have a lot of time to think.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? We spoke about it earlier, and about, you know, music and playing music and the reasons for engaging in any creative process. I think, you know, whether it's art or whether it's playing music or writing or anything you do, and, you know, the main reason that people do that, and I think the main reason that people should do it, is that it's some way of expressing something that you maybe can't necessarily talk about, right? And that's a really, really good thing, and, you know, that should be encouraged. And it's like, I don't, whether you kind of say, if you're not got some way of expressing yourself, then that's going to lead to you having mental health problems. That's obviously not the case, because, you know, by all accounts, some people are really happy just going through bang, bang, bang. There's my life. I'm doing this thing. I'm doing that thing. I'm doing that, so on and so forth. Whereas actually, you know, what you find is that a lot of people who are creative, that's the way of channeling it, and that's the way of getting satisfaction from their life, probably. And that's probably, in a way, the meaning of their life and the focus of their life, and that's the thing that they go back to upon anything else. And again, I can only refer to myself, because it's only myself that I know about, but with myself, I certainly found that after a certain period of time, I realised that the main reason that I still played guitar and wrote music and wrote songs and, you know, wrote guitar parts and stuff was for this reason, that it was, you know, it was a creative process, and it gave me it fulfilled me in some way to do it, basically. It's the long and short.
I mean, you're not someone that expresses themselves emotionally per se, you know, but you do things that can be considered that's a version of that, you know, like guitar and working out and all that is an expression as well.
But anything creative that you write, if you write songs and if you write lyrics and you write music and you do all that stuff, then, you know, that's all some sort of creative process, and it all gets something out of you that you maybe obviously needed to get out in some kind of a way. But I think it is good that there's a highlight on, and that people are more willing to talk about like their mental health and stuff like that, and they're willing to be more open to people talking about it, which I think is really, really good as well. But
there's going to be an uptick in people who are just, you know, casually depressed. Would you say, like?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you can't be blasé about, you know, if someone says, you know, I'm depressed or I have a mental health problem, then you should treat that with respect and treat it seriously. Having said that, you know, there may be a case of, you know, people, if you self-diagnose, you know, it's like anything, you shouldn't self-diagnose. You should seek the advice of a expert, a medical professional. If you think you're depressed, go to your doctor. And, you know, if you think your doctor's going to prescribe you antidepressants so you don't want to take them, tell them you don't want to take them. And, you know, you should reach out to someone. I hate that phrase. Why did I say that? Reach out.
Well, our thoughts and prayers are with you at this point.
But, you know, you should go and speak to someone. I think there's a danger of, if everyone kind of goes, oh, I feel a bit glum today, or I feel a bit down. You know, everyone feels down. Everyone feels terrible sometimes. You know, everyone wakes up sometimes and goes, oh God, I've got to go and do that thing I don't like doing again. Whatever it is, going to work, going to school, going to college, going to, you know, anything. So you can't really conflate, and it actually is a bit offensive to people who do suffer serious mental health problems to say, oh, you know, well, I didn't really fancy going to work today, and I felt a bit down on the bus, I felt a bit grey, you know, I have a mental health problem. It's like, you know, there's a lot of people with really, really serious mental health problems who, you know, I've had various interactions with in my life in one way or another, and that's like, you shouldn't really conflate those things. And, you know, I'm really careful with what I'm saying here, because you don't want to be seen to...
Be insensitive.
Be insensitive. And I think that there is... You know, you should take everyone seriously if they say they've got some issue, and you should listen to them and talk to them.
Is that true though? Like,
well, you shouldn't wallow in it.
Can you base it on a merit and what you know of that person? You know,
well, you can't if you know them. No, I mean, me and you shouldn't sit. You know, if someone comes to me or you and says, "Oh, I've got this problem," there's nothing that we have to go.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, definitely, but you shouldn't judge them.
Okay.
But it's a responsibility on everyone's part, isn't it? And you can't blame everything on outside forces. And to a great extent, or to some extent, you need to, if you in your life, take some responsibility for things. And there are things that you can do in your own life, which will improve your lot in life. And I'm not saying that like everyone should pull themselves up by their bootstraps and, you know, just get on with it.
Yeah.
Because that's blatantly not true, and I don't agree with that idea whatsoever. But I do think there are certain actions you can take in your life to take responsibility back for it, and to take some agency back, and try and create changes in your life that may just be positive for you. And sometimes they'll be painful, and sometimes they won't be painful.
It's a tough situation, because symptoms of depression and sort of really bad thoughts is self-sabotage. Yeah, you know, and it's tough, like, to know when someone
tumbling down the rabbit hole, isn't it?
Yeah, how to know when someone has been genuinely sort of helpless, or they're just like trying to set themselves up to be, you know, not do something.
And actually, if someone's having a mental episode, are they going to be of the mindset to speak to someone and say, look, I think I'm having a bit of a bad turn here? I don't know if they are. I think the question we're trying to answer is, if you feel unhappy,
Yeah.
should you be able to talk to someone about that? Absolutely, definitely yes. And I think that it's important for everyone to know that everyone does feel like that, regardless of what they see, you know, in real life or on social media, or when they watch the Kardashians or whatever they see, you know.
I'd be depressed watching them as well.
Well, but people aren't, are they? They watch it and they go, "Oh, well, that's great. I want to have a life like them." But it's like, well, do you though? And
I think that's tied to sort of your mental well-being as well. Like they did studies on people who scroll through Instagram all day, and they found that people had like a higher sort of low self-esteem, which is a bit confusing, but the way I've phrased it there, and
you are more likely to have low self-esteem,
and like depression problems, because you're sitting scrolling through people that this is probably not even their actual life. It's the best representation of what they can give, or what they think their life is, and you're looking through a list of that. No wonder you're going to be depressed by that.
You know what it's like? It's like seeing the Matrix where he takes him into that bit and he shows him, you know, what are these clothes I'm wearing and where's this room? And he says, this is your residual self-image, right? This is the bit that sticks with me from the Matrix. And that's like your view of yourself, like the perfect version of yourself, like the summation of that across your life. And that's your residual self-image. And what Instagram and all that basically is that's people's...
It's like a hyper version of that.
Version of that.
It's a hyper version.
So I'm living this amazing life and I did this and I did that and I've got this amazing person in my life and I've got this and that and the next thing. And of course that's depressing because you look at it and go, oh well, I've not got that. I've not got all that money. I don't have that watch.
I don't have an arse like that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have an arse like that. Exactly. The prime example. You look at the Kim Kardashians.
No, Jen Settler, is it? The one with she's got like 12 million followers and she just shows her arse. That's it.
Right, well, you know what?
Fair
like fair play to her.
But it does sort of reinforce the sort of vapidness of society just now, though. If you think about it, when Instagram is like the pinnacle of all that, and that's like what we want people to perceive us as. Yeah,
and but it's difficult, isn't it? Because at the other side, you can look at these things as a really positive force. Like there's loads of stuff you could see and find out about that you would never get a chance to before. And I always remember being, you know, you and I are probably from the last generation that will have grown up without the internet when we were really young, without a phone when you were 8 or 9 or 10, and without even without having access to the internet. Think about that. Like, and then you get the internet and you've got this shitty like dial-up internet and you can't go on it when your mum's on the phone and all this sort of shit.
Yeah,
exactly.
Get off porn.
So it's like we're kind of remember what it was like to go, you know what? I remember thinking, there must be a whole world out there that I don't know anything about, and I wish I could find out about it. And what I was thinking about is effectively Google. Do you know what I mean? Google, where you can just go on your phone, you know, what is the population of Tunisia? Oh, well, it's this. Oh, brilliant.
You don't have to wait till the library opens, you know, and you do.
So where's the books on the population of Tunisia? Oh, well, actually, that one is over there, but it's out of date 5 years ago. Oh,
we don't have them in stock, actually.
And, you know, it's amazing the transfer of information around the globe so fast, and that's that in a way, you know, that's like a facile point because it's so obvious, but at the same time, you shouldn't take it for granted that it's amazing that you can tap in all these different things. You know, Instagram's a good example. Anything you had an interest in, you could just go on your phone, put that word into like the search field, and then hundreds of thousands of entries are going to come up that can make you, you know, say for example, you were looking at this room and you thought, right, I want to decorate this room. You could go office spaces. I would search that on Pinterest and Instagram, and instantly within about 5 minutes you could probably find about 25 suitable options that you could just go, right, well, I want it to be that colour with that wardrobe, etc, 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 and that's great. Whereas before, how would you do that? You go and get a catalogue, go to B&Q, go to like wherever and see.
I mean, it was amazing when they brought like you could mix your own paint. You know, that was like that was crazy when that idea came out. But
well, I don't get excited about mixing paint. So.
But what is amazing though, like we're saying, like the explosion of information, and I think it's just we're trying to figure out how to deal with it all. I think we're not at that point just now. Have you ever seen Paul, the Alien movie?
No, I haven't actually seen that. No, is that who's in that with him?
Seth, the comedian guy, Seth something or another. Rogen?
Green.
Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen.
Yeah, the guy from Superbad. And he's the voice of the alien, and it's Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, who are the two geeks that happen to bump into
good old-fashioned British actors, pre-Brexit actors.
And there's a scene where there's a really religious girl, and she's talking about how he's a demon, the alien, because she sees him. And he puts his hand on her head, and she gets all the information that he's had his whole species up until that point. And it's just like overwhelming and she faints. I mean, that's what's happening to us with the internet.
Yeah.
Like, we've just had this overwhelming wash of information, like, all over our bodies.
Yeah.
And we're barely clinging on. Like, and I think it's just going to right itself at some point. I mean, how long's the internet been around?
Like mid-80s or something like that? Yeah, I mean, mid-80s. I don't think everyone had, widespread access to it until...
I mean, technically, it's been a version of it's been around since the 60s, but like in the mass population, it's probably 90s. Do you think late 90s?
Surely, like late 90s, you'd imagine.
That's nothing.
Yeah, I know. In the grand, in the grand spectra of human history, it's really nothing. So it's interesting to see how it'll play out. And what you see as well now is, like, say a news story comes out, like something happens in Egypt, for example. I don't know why I keep referring to Egypt and Tunisia and all that. But if something happens in Egypt, right? Arab Spring or whatever.
There is stuff happening in Egypt.
Stuff happens in Egypt all the time. Do you know what I mean? Big country. So that happens, and then the news of it comes out an hour later. Then an hour later, everyone's got an opinion on that. Then an hour later, everyone's got a counter opinion. Then an hour later, more information comes out, and everyone's got a counter opinion on it. People are sort of cycling through the process of understanding these events as they happen without really understanding them, glossing over them, and then they're forgotten the next day immediately.
Is it like 12 hours, I think, is the news cycle now for people in their attention span to something that's came out?
But, I mean, think about that. I mean, what chance do you have to, like, structure and organise society if that's...
Or your life. Yeah, your life or your thoughts.
Yeah. It's like, you know what I mean? Another thing is all this information, people... retain it, but they also just like having it put in front of them. Like, this is really a convenience thing, and people put a lot of value in having all that information at hand, and it gives them something to go, oh, that's good. Oh, I don't think that's very good, or oh, I think that's quite good, or oh, I don't really like that. And they can have their opinion on it, but they never have to really interact with it. Like, they don't have to go and talk to anyone about it. They don't have to go and
defend it.
They don't have to go and engage with it in any sort of way. They don't have to go and fight for it. It's just the information's there. Oh, well, I don't know about that. And you really notice this apathy and this sort of misinformation being really, really prevalent in the two referendums we had, didn't you? Like, in the Scottish referendum, people basically didn't fancy it because enough people in Scotland thought, well, it's not going to benefit me, so
I mean,
not really interested.
What are your thoughts on that whole thing? Because I don't think I've seen you since the referendum and the Brexit vote went through. I mean, I've talked about this a little bit before, and like, I'm not like I hate nationalism and patriotism, but I love Scotland. Like, I'm not like Scotland all over the world, but it's a beautiful country, and it has its merits. But I was really, really disappointed in the direction it went down, because we had a real opportunity to become a prominent country on the world stage. And we just flushed it down the toilet, I guess. Like, we've self-sabotaged at every world, event. The World Cup, Scotland is always like, doesn't even qualify to qualify, I know. And it seems like we just perpetually sabotage ourselves.
Well, it's too wee and too stupid, isn't it? It's that kind of thing. And I kind of had it at the time of the referendum. I was like, initially, like, historically, I'd been like not in favour of Scottish independence and kind of thought it was the domain of like the flag waving nationalist sort of William Wallace.
People who watch Braveheart on repeat.
Yeah, people who love Braveheart, Shortbread,
which it was though,
etc., etc. And I think there is a valid point that it was that, but it kind of grew into being like, well, look, we can do something with this country that is really, really positive, and we can push it down a really positive model of governance, and we can be quite inclusive, push it down a broadly social democratic platform.
And historically, Scotland's been quite liberal, down the years.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the trade union thing and all that. I think there's a bit of a false conflation in saying, Scotland is a super liberal country, because we don't have a lot of the same challenges.
But we've not had that fundamentalist religious base.
No, that's true.
We've been explorers and scientists all throughout history, because we're not being like an English sort of...
But people do stab each other because one's a Catholic and one's a Protestant. Do you know what I mean? And
that stems from Ireland, though.
Yeah, but people care about it more on the west coast of Scotland than they do care about it in Ireland anymore, to a great extent. So, so I came to it from that kind of mentality, but then was kind of won round to the fact that the hope and the optimism and the positivity of it of the Yes campaign, even the fact, if you break down the symbolism of the two campaigns, Yes is called Yes. It's positive. It's good. It's like, let's make a thing happen. Let's take a bit of a chance, and we're not going to be any worse off.
No.
Let's go and drive forward a change and make this country like amazing, make it great again.
Yeah.
The No campaign was all about negativity. It was all about fear. It was about, no, we won't be able to do this. We'll be, scaring you out of doing that, so on and so forth. And that just really,
currency and all this nonsense.
And as we've just discussed, sometimes if you want to make a really positive change in your life or in society, you need to push through all that kind of bollocks. But what won the day was sort of Scottish low level, not like conservatism with a small c, which is that people are comfortable and they're like, well, they said we might not get to use the pound and I'm a bit scared about that, or they said that I might have to pay a penny more tax and I'm not happy with that.
Would you say it's fair to say that it was an older generation that kind of voted for no?
Well, the stats show that, but it's not like it was all the 70s and over that dragged this out, because it still required 55% of the population to sign up for it. And there's a lot of people you meet who are sort of middle-aged. They could be working class, could be middle class, and they could just think, do you know what, I've got it all right. And whether they admit this or not, they think, well, I've got it all right, so I don't see any reason to rock the boat. And that's fair enough, and ultimately, you're not going to change society with that kind of mindset. But ultimately, if you don't want to, that's fine.
Yeah.
But really, the youth vote obviously did come out in force, and the younger generation certainly came out in favour of Yes and said, look, we don't like what's going on in the UK in general. We don't like being under a Tory government that not no one, but a majority of people did not vote for and do not support, and there's no history of supporting. And we don't like those policies. And even the Scottish devolved government has had its fair share of success with diverging from those policies, which is good. And
also there was the threat of Brexit hanging over people who were young at that point as well.
But here's the big fucking sting in the tail, isn't it? You think, right, okay, well, everyone kind of, I knew a fair few people. Not again, I'm saying everyone. That's ridiculous. But I knew a fair few. Well,
you were in Glasgow, so that was like traditionally yes.
That's true. But I knew a fair few people who were like, well, I wouldn't want to necessarily vote yes to independence because we might not get back into the European Union.
Right.
And then you think, well, that's a fair point. But now here we are, still in the UK with a Tory government. Alliance with the DUP, and we're leaving the European Union. So it's kind of like the worst scenario.
We never won. We didn't win anything out of this whole thing. Have you seen how this week Sturgeon has sort of tried to embargo what's been going on with the conditions of the deal?
Yeah, and she wants all the powers that the EU has to go back to the devolved parliament in Scotland. That is a tough one, isn't it? Because that's like further devolution. Whereas actually, if you're a grassroots independence supporter, still not enough for you. And actually, the one I would have been, initially really in favour of is actual Devo Max. Like maybe still being nominally attached to the UK. Unless you are a flag waving nationalist, you're not really going to be particularly concerned with you must be an independent country. That's kind of that's a statement, and you could come back to that and say, oh, but what about Britain's imperial past? It's like, well, I'm sorry, but we were a part of that too. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of streets in Glasgow that are named after slave owners and merchant barons and these kind of things. So we can't wash our hands of that. We have to take our part of the responsibility for that. And that's fine.
Obviously, in the past, further back, Scotland was notoriously treated bad as well.
But that's so far back that it doesn't affect.
Not true.
It's really beyond the spectrum of mattering.
It still happened, though.
Yeah, of course it matters. Yeah. Of course it happened, and of course it matters. But for us, it's not really. That's not. And in fact, dwelling on all this stuff in the past is really not going to get us anywhere now. And that's actually what.
But there's a difference between not dwelling on it and ignoring it and not learning from the past.
Yeah. And we need to learn from it, but that's not what we're doing in the form of this Brexit thing now, because the attitude is basically, well, we are Britain, so they need us more than we need them. They'll do what we want. And the EU 27 have pretty solidly said, well, no, that's not what will be happening. You'll be doing what we want. And we've said, well, we'll not be paying a divorce bill. Well, you will be paying 60 billion. Okay, well, maybe there is that. Well, you know, we want the rights of UK citizens in the EU to be secured. Well, we want the rights of EU citizens in the UK to be secured. Ah, right. I'm not sure. So, I mean, that whole thing's a shit show. And actually, the UK has just displayed how hopelessly inept it is at the negotiating process, at the thought process behind Brexit, at the planning. You know, they admitted there was no plan for Brexit.
Who's it down to? Like, who would you say is like the person that you can point this all on, or is it just the government as a whole?
Well, you know, it's easy to blame the government for just, oh, the government's rubbish, the government does this, the government does that. Even it's easy to go, the Tories do this, the Tories do that. You know, there's an argument for, if you don't want Tories, go and vote for someone else. But that idea hasn't got a lot of traction, and there is a lot of
not in Scotland anyway.
Yeah, there is a lot of summed forces behind keeping the Tories in power for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into all that pure InfoWars conspiracy type territory now, you know, and I don't think it's true even. But there is a lot of things to dictate that, you know, neoliberalism is such a powerful dogma now that people can't even see past it. It's like the way, you know, I'm not an evangelist for Jeremy Corbyn, but I think that Jeremy Corbyn is a principled man who stands up for good principles, who represents good ideas and has always stuck to them, and I think that's quite admirable. Is he a professional politician? Well, yes. Should he be? Probably not, because he doesn't want to fight the fights of you know, of politicians that they would fight. He doesn't want to get up and like get stuck into the Tories. But he doesn't call them out on the.
And he also sees like murder as murder, like going bombing someone. You know, like like May has done in Syria. You know, without any consultation, basically from the rest of the UK. That murder is murder. You know, there's no way that you can stop civilian casualties and that kind of. You know, it's just it's not like a laser surgical tactical missile that hits one person and then the rest of them round them survive.
Just one hospital. That's fine.
Exactly.
No, that's,
you know, and Corbyn sees like the hypocrisy in that. I think like I'm not a huge like he is a good, and I think it would have been good for Scotland if he got into power.
Yes.
You know, because he would have been more open to whatever Scotland was wanting, and he would deal with it better, I guess.
But actually, you know, given a lot of the stated aims of the Yes movement to create a more progressive and inclusive and tolerant society, and one that treats people more fairly and taxes the rich higher and supports the poorest better, that was the stated aims of the Yes movement. They're the stated aims of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
So would in fact then it not make sense for us to go, right, well, those are the aims we wanted to achieve. The Yes movement was a way for us to achieve those goals. You know, take out the it's great to be Scottish bit, which, you know, it is. We'll have to all admit that. That's fine. But then surely you would go, right, well, Jeremy Corbyn's going to do that for the whole UK.
Yeah.
Our English and Welsh and Northern Irish brothers and sisters are going to share the same thing. And, you know,
would people then want to move on to being an independent nation? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, would that still be as appealing to, you know, to 45% of the population? I think it would still be appealing to 30%, which is the historical level that independence support always ran at.
But he's only a temporary entity in the government.
Like the Labour Party.
However many years down the line, there's going to be someone else that comes in, you know, and that might have an effect. It might be another Tory government, you know, and we're going to say that we don't want another referendum because we were happy with Corbyn. You know, you always got to think down the road.
That's true, but there's going to need to be, you know, that's definitely true, and I know that's a big thing, is that, you know, we can take the future in our hands now, but it could also equally be the case that we could vote for an independent Scotland, and in the independent Scotland government, which we have, could return a party who pursues policies similar to the Conservative manifesto.
True.
You know, this idea of like Scotland being a liberal utopia is fine, and look, if it was true, superb. I just think that when you actually get into the nitty gritty of it, you know, there's a bunch of Tory politicians, Tory MPs from Scotland now. So there's going to be that same percentage represented at an independent Scottish Parliament. Presumably an independent Scottish Government Parliament would be proportional representation, so, which is what we all want and press for. So those voices would have a voice at the table, and you would need to balance up everything that went through as that. So it's not going to be as simple as going, oh, well, we're independent Scotland now, you know, free caramel wafers for everyone. It's going to be like, right, well, we need to take all these voices that are around the table, and there's all these different interests, and there's people who have money, and there's people who don't want to be taxed more, and we've got to balance up their opinions with people who don't have as much money, and people who don't have jobs because, you know, their industry was destroyed that they were in, or people who, you know, are fishermen that can't make a living doing fishing or whatever. So you need to think about all that, and you know it is true that we could vote for Jeremy Corbyn and we could all go, right, okay, well, independence doesn't matter because Corbyn's going to revolutionise the country, but there needs to be a paradigm shift where the consensus is that whatever the Tories do, whether they do a bad version of it or a not so bad version of it, is okay because it's neoliberalism. You know, it's fine. It's like, well, you know, people will get on in life if they work hard, which, you know, fair enough, that's maybe the case. You shouldn't tax people that much, right? You start to take a bit of truck with that. You think, well, is that true? Everyone wants the best public services and everyone wants a strong NHS, but everyone's also been convinced of the idea that you should avoid paying tax where possible.
Which we know is like works in Scandinavian countries. Norway,
well, high tax,
and it's one of the best places to live in the world is Norway, you know.
And it's one of the biggest ways of, you know, it's one of the best ways of equalising the differences in society as well, and stopping the gross inequalities that, you know, what's his name? Is his name Philip Green, the guy who ran BHS and all that? And he was like on a yacht where all his staff were getting made redundant. All these sort of like disgusting, gross inequalities. You think, well, is there a way of ironing them out and, you know, taxing people who earn over a certain threshold?
But you're verging on like sort of anti-capitalism here.
But are you though? Because this is interesting because this is what obviously Corbyn's.
I mean, you're meeting.
Corbyn's
beating a little bit.
You're getting more into social democratic territory. So you're saying, look, capitalism's a good force and it allows the world to push on and kick on, and it allows people to be entrepreneurial, it allows people to make money and improve the lot in life, and that's all great, but you also have to acknowledge that it's a force that needs to be restrained, because unrestrained it doesn't work, and it actually just...
Well, we've seen in the last 10 years what's happened to an unrestrained capitalistic society.
And it increases, you know, inequality hugely, whereas if you get it in check and you put the correct checks and balances in place, then you're less likely to have that happen. You know, inequality is always going to exist in a society, and I think that it's maybe naive to say that it's not. You know, are you ever going to create a completely equal society across every parameter and every measurable? No, you're not.
Equal opportunity is what you want to create. Like that is up to that person to whether they want to take it up. You know, so there's some people that I've talked about this before, but there are some people in society that just are going to be on the dole, you know, their whole life, because they're not made to work. Like they've came out and are born just incapable of working, and it's not in them. But there's always going to be that level of person, and then there's going to be the complete opposite, who are like psychotic business owners of massive corporations. You know, there's going to be that disparity.
But it's never enough for them. They always want to work more because they always want to make more money, even beyond the point of needing it. And that's interesting that you look at some of these guys, like you look at Elon Musk and you go, why doesn't he just give up? He's got so much money. He surely doesn't need to work again. But it's not even about, it's still about making money. But it's about making money to make money. He doesn't need money to live his life. He needs money to like have loads, to like be seen to be powerful as a status thing, and that's fair enough. And I think that, you know,
as leverage as well, as a person when he tries to make products, he wants to be able to leverage people to sort of then
want to deal with
the confidence for him to be able to do that, and people be like, yeah, we understand that he's going to do it because he's done it before.
And I think that, you know, actually all these, you know, people in that situation, that's fair enough. You know, they're pushing themselves on, and if they want to keep trying to innovate and make more money and make more money and make more money, you know, that's fine. Should they be taxed a lot of that? Yes. Should they complain about that? No, because then they should realise that that's how other people are going to get the chance to get to that place. But the other thing is that, you know, there are always going to be people who either don't have the intelligence right to work that much, or are born into an environment where they're instantly disadvantaged. And that's the real problem, is that, you know, if you're born into a family or into an environment, maybe not even a family,
So yeah, you're saying that it's people can be born into sort of
Well, I think they
poverty.
can't they? You know, if you're born into a situation where you're never given any, you know, encouragement that you should go and try and learn, try and improve yourself, and try and make something of yourself, you're never going to have. And if you don't have any positive role models to do that, and you don't have any drive to do it, and you basically don't understand the idea that if you work harder, you'll get more. Then, you know, you're not going to be driven to do that. And whether that's right or not is another matter altogether. You know.
So do you think it should be the government's sort of main job to sort of bridge those gaps in society?
I think narrowing the differences, the big vaulting leaps in inequality is really the big thing, because, you know, I think you are kind of, to a certain extent, there are stories that prove this wrong, but if you're born into a really, really, really negative situation where you have nothing positive going on around you or in around you, you're going to have a hard time from there, because you're going to go to school thereafter and you're going to struggle to, maybe you'll not know that you need to be motivated, maybe you won't be able to be motivated because you'll be distracted by what's going on outside of what's going on there, thus you won't learn anything, you maybe won't get into a positive situation there, maybe you'll get expelled from school. Then what are you going to do in terms of a job opportunity? Well, are you going to get a job, or are you going to drift into something else?
Yeah.
Are you going to get into trouble outside of school? Once you're in trouble with the law, you're going to have a bigger problem getting a job, etc., etc., etc. All these obstacles are set up. And don't get me wrong, I think everyone's got obstacles in front of them, and there are huge obstacles to people doing, you know, even if they're from a fine, you know, background, and they're brought up in a, you know, a stable environment, and they're taught all the right things about having a work ethic and going and trying to make something of yourself. There's plenty of obstacles to being a success in that area as well. Do you know what I mean? If you decide you want to be a journalist at a top newspaper, you're going to have a hard time because you need to have a lot of money to go and do an unpaid internship for however many months or years it's going to be.
Even to go through the school to put yourself through it, to become a journalist.
Yeah, to go. But the thing is, you could get the loan and all that to go to university, and you could get yourself the debt and reconcile yourself to the fact you get the debt. But then once you've done all that, you need to go, right, well, I need to either get loads more debt to go and actually do the journalism internship to get the job as a journalist on the bottom rung of the ladder, and then how are you going to pay back your however much money it is. If you're in Scotland, it could be, if you just got a student loan, it could be 18 to 20 grand. If you're paying tuition fees in England, it could be 60 grand or something like that.
Are you still in university? Because you were doing that for a while. You
studied history. I finished that a year before I moved to Glasgow, actually. So I finished that when I was 25. So it was 21 to 25. I studied history at Dundee, which was great. I have to say, was really
politics as well.
Amazing.
Is that what you said?
I started politics at first, and then just because in humanities you kind of start doing a few different threads at the same time. So I did like a bit of history, a bit of politics, bit of tiny bit of economics, and that kind of thing.
How does it work when you just go and do history? Is it like they have a specific area that they focus on each year, or is it just general sort of history? So
each year modules tends to focus in on, a particular historical period, would probably be fair to say.
And does that change from year, from?
Yeah. So if you say you're doing you choose a bunch of modules, one might be on early modern Europe, but one might be on the long 20th century, what happened. One might be on.
I've never heard of it described that way, but it totally is though.
One might be on, something to do with American politics, like modern, or something might be to do with Britain's colonial history or anything like that. And you do all these things kind of intertwined separately, all these little blocks. And for example, I did Imperial Russia, and then did the Russian Revolution, which is really a really tight focus on what basically happens leading up to and including 1917, the two revolutions in Russia in that time, and then a few years after that, and gives you a really tight focus for a whole basically year. You do that module.
So it's everything leading up to communism.
Yeah, and the start of that, and how you get into Stalinism, and how the initial ideas of Marx feed into Leninism, and how they feed into Stalinism, and how the people of Russia interacted with these ideas, and how the Russian revolutions came to pass, and Mensheviks and Bolsheviks and all this kind of thing, and how the Civil War played out.
It's funny now that those have become sort of dirty words, especially in America, like Marxism and communism. It's seen as sort of a left thing. But well, obviously it is.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing a lot of people don't know and forget sometimes, is that communism is the left.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what it was.
Well,
Seen
it's the
as.
hard end of it's the hard end of the political horseshoe.
Yeah.
If you go
But when you think
far
of
enough
Russia,
right,
you
yeah.
think of it as a sort of like, you know, like a dictator
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
top. Essentially, what it was.
Yeah.
But it was still the left, which is so like weird to sort of try and piece together.
Well, this is where it kind of got twisted. Really, is that obviously Stalin took what was initially like a people's revolution on various levels, and certainly was for the benefit of the people, and made that into like a one-party dictatorship.
Yeah.
And there's no small amount of irony in that. And you know, again, there's hundreds of millions of people probably died in Russia in that time under the guise of communism.
Was it sort of
the communist retort to that is that wasn't really communism. That was like a distorted mutant version of it. But if you're in America and because you're in the West, you go, well, communist Russia, that was bad, or the people were starving, Stalin was killing
democracy
them
is
all.
not the version of democracy that it should be either. You
No.
know, in the West,
Yeah,
it's all
exactly.
bastardizations.
Yeah, but I think Marx's original ideas obviously flew pretty far out the window by the time they'd got to what Stalin was doing. But that was a reaction to the reality on the ground, in, as it were, in Russia at the time. Is from what I can understand, and it's an extremely complex topic to get into and to try and boil down in any sort of quick way. But really, the Russian revolutions came from dissatisfaction, in fact, from the middle classes with the imperial system in Russia, and what they had previously and what they'd been used to in Russia was this imperial system of having a czar who, not like our monarchy, actually did control everything in whatever way he wanted. And you had serfs,
say that they don't control anything.
they don't control so you had like the czars, and then you had basically the rest of like most of Russia was peasants or serfs or whatever you want to call
SARS.
it. Is it so? The czars, and then like
is it SARS?
SARS,
But it's with the silent T.
TSARS, and then you have like the majority of the Russian population was like serfs, basically, like almost slaves, but they were free, they weren't owned, but they were very much limited in what they could do. And then with the emergence of a Russian middle class, that kind of led, and the ideas of Marx, these ideas broadly dovetailed together. Yeah.
Just to interject, does that middle class come through the application of communism?
No, it's before. It's the middle class that drives on the ideas and the prevalence of ideas that will be then taken up in like the workers' councils and the factories and stuff that will lead to the two revolutions that happen. And it's quite interesting that basically they wanted to. The kind of the idea initially was, well, we need to get rid of Tsarism. We need to put something in its place, and it needs to be organised more along the lines of what the people want. So they try a first version of this, February, doesn't really work. People aren't really satisfied with how radical it is. So it's like, well, let's do, they need to get more radical. So let's reform this big time, and let's organise everything at like a local council level. And obviously, when you
how did a massive country like that though give up everything to try something new? Like, how did that work?
Well, you think
how do you come to that point where everyone's like, yeah, we have to reform this into something?
Well, if you think about, the Russian peasant populations were obviously not really particularly satisfied with their lot in life, I don't think. But really, it really came from when people started moving into the cities and seeing in their collective sort of living conditions and what they were creating. That's where the ideas of like proletariat and bourgeoisie really take hold, because people are going, right, okay, we're working really, really hard. Effectively, this is boiling it down really, really simply. The proletariat goes, right, there's loads of us, we're working really, really hard, we're not getting any rewards for our labour, we're living in terrible conditions, and we're working in these factories. There's people who own the factories, who are the bourgeoisie, who are reaping all the rewards from our labour. Who's talking about this? Oh, Marx is talking about it. Right, okay. Those ideas spread like wildfire.
Right.
In that environment, obviously, because people go, hang on, we are being oppressed here. This isn't fair, because there's loads of us. We're all doing the same thing. This guy's taking all the money. Further up the chain, someone else is taking the money. That doesn't really work for me. And then that's how you get to like organised protest, because you live in a city together. It's easier, that kind of thing. And that's how it came from. It's really dissatisfaction with inequality, and also the Tsarist system, and the Tsars were seen as like increasingly corrupt and inept. Like they were kind of bumbling through years and years and years, and they were seen to be kind of corrupt and not acting in the best interest of
not
the people.
working for the people.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it is worthwhile noting that it was like educated middle class people who had been to university and stuff and studied Marx and who effectively had the time to study it, who were able to start spreading these ideas around. And you know, that's what Lenin called like a revolutionary vanguard. It is like people who really weren't the direct beneficiaries of the revolution per se, because they were already middle class. Like, you know, they were doing okay,
comfortable place.
Yeah, they were pretty comfortable. But their idea was that they would be the vanguard to drive in, like to usher in the liberation and the freedom of the proletariat.
It's so complicated.
I know.
It's weird that you have to have a certain class of people to rise up for then to become more aware of a situation going on below them, prospectively, to then help them.
Which makes sense. But if you're John factory worker and you're going to work for 14 hours a day in a factory in you know Leningrad, well, St. Petersburg or Moscow or wherever you are, then you're going, right, okay, not really got time to go and read loads of books by Marx. Maybe I can't even read. You know, all I do is smelt metal together all day. So they don't really. No, it's like the Marxist thing is that they're not aware of their own shackles. You know, the proletariat weren't aware of that they were being enslaved, and thus they needed to be, you know, liberated, and they needed to be put in a position of power whereby the decisions would be made in the interests of the broad, you know, the broader society. And it's interesting because, you know, it did get obviously messed up beyond belief and warped and distorted after that, and obviously, you know, hundreds of millions of people died in Russia as a result of, you know, gulags and the one-party system and everything that went like all to fuck. Not to mention the number of people they sacrificed to the World War so that, you know, the Allied forces could win that. Yeah. So, you know, if they hadn't been fighting on two fronts, then, you know, Germany probably would have won the war, and we would have been, you know, friar tucked, basically.
There was something you told me, I remember, because when I grew up, I didn't have the sort of outlet to talk about things like this when I was younger. And I think you and Dave McCaffrey were the people when I started to get a little bit older and sort of be more curious about stuff. You guys would entertain my silly questions, you know. And I think you told me something that kind of blew my mind about that time. It was something about like there was a way of studying how people perceived things at that time. I can't remember how you put it exactly, but you told me about how people actually felt and how it was different from how we think about them feeling at that time.
Oh, well, that's the whole kind of, that was really the main thing, probably the main thing that you learn doing a degree in history, is that it's actually no use looking at what we think about the situation at the time, because we have the benefit of the 100 years of historical knowledge of what's gone after and all the sort of perceptions and the biases that gives you, and you go and you take all that information and go, how did they not see that wasn't going to work? Whereas if you're there at the time, you only know, firstly, your microcosmic part of what is going on. So you have to try and understand the pressures on a daily, weekly, monthly, lifelong basis that people would face in that environment. And it's hard for us to do that because, you know, we live in a comfortable, cosseted kind of warm, nice environment where we've got like homes that we live in that are nice and warm. We've got jobs that we go to where we don't have to shovel coal and smelt stuff for 14 hours a day.
But is the Western world the world's middle class that needs to see that and then revolutionise the world somehow? But
then there's a bit of the sort of white knight scenario, isn't there? It's a bit like, oh, we'll go and help the old poor brown people over there, and you know where that ends up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, you've got to be kind of wary of that. You just the thing you really have to be aware of is your own sort of preconceptions and biases and thinking, you know, well, this is how it is now, so why didn't everyone else understand it through that same frame of reference and through that same lens? And of course they didn't, because everyone's got their own frame of reference and their own lens, and this in fact is why people disagree perpetually and never agree on anything in terms of politics and everything, is because they don't actually see, oh well, this person's got a different life experience to me, they've had this situation, that situation, I've been brought up in this way, I've learned this, you know. And that's a big part of what you're trying to get to the root of. And if you study history, as you're trying to get to, right, okay, well, what were the forces effectively in play at the time that drove those things happening in the way they did? Not applying your, oh well, they shouldn't have done this and they shouldn't have done that because that was bad. You're trying to get to, you know, you can't get to objective truth about it, because truth's quite a
subjective thing,
a difficult concept to grasp, and one that certainly you can't pull out of the area, because my truth and your truth on something will be completely different. but you're trying to get from the evidence that's available as much of a feel for what was creating things, what was driving things, and what were the factors that led to certain things happening, whether they were good or bad, or whether it was a mistake that one person made. You try and build all these things together. And that's really why, you know, when I studied, I really found sort of relatively modern history was what I was kind of interested in. So really from like the Enlightenment till now, I would never really got interested in like, you know, ancient history or even like
prehistory, sorry.
Yeah, or even particularly like ancient, like older Scottish history, you know, any of that kind of stuff I wasn't really interested in. I was interested in the world, why the world is shaped as it is now, like all the things that have built into that being.
You can put your finger on where it's sort of sparked up and how it came to be.
But you can and you can't, because it takes like, always take interesting twists and turns, and things happen that you don't quite expect, and it's only when you start to dissect them afterwards you can start to get some picture of why things are going on. Because often, you know, things happen in the world that kind of no one would foresee, but there is obviously forces that lead into them that you don't understand, you know.
Since we've sort of last hung out, which has been a few years, the world is like drastically changed.
Yeah, I think so.
And do you think there is a sort of a general acceptance now for anti-intellectualism? Is that something that you see as a thing?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it is obviously frustrating to see people say things like, I don't care what the experts say, or I don't trust experts, because and much like you, in fact, I've always been someone that's got like that quest to find out more, and that like thirst for the knowledge of what's going on, and trying to get as much information as possible, and trying to sort of educate yourself. Whereas it seems like people, you know, are maybe more overwhelmed by the fact that, oh God, there's so much information out there. It's almost tiring to try and wade through it all. And even, you know, I would certainly say that, you know, I would feel like this quite a lot as well. As like, there's a lot of people out there who know a lot more about everything than you do. Yeah. And I'm kind of acutely aware of that. So anti-intellectualism is maybe like people's reaction to that and going, look, well, I just see the world the way I see it, mate. So I just look at what I see around me and I make up my decisions based on that. But even on that, even at that point is totally invalid, because people don't do that, because they actually make the decisions based on what other people tell them and what they choose to believe.
You're always got to trust people that you're being informed correctly, regardless of what direction you're coming from. Yeah. And I think, like, there's so much access to any information. You can back up anything that you believe by any statistic, any sort of scientific, you know, like the flat Earth thing. I mean, that would never came about 20 years ago. Yeah, exactly. It's only with the access and the advent of a community-based online that they can then sort of self-perpetuate in like an echo chamber where they're all just talking. And
well, that's the big thing, isn't it? Is people reinforcing other people's stupid, ill-advised, ignorant opinions. You know what I mean? And we could all do that, and I'm sure we actually all do it quite a lot. But you know, if you believe something that is like inherently stupid and has been proved untrue, if you can find 5 other people that want to believe the same thing because it's convenient for them, then you can all convince each other, oh, do you know what? We all believe this. We're right. Yeah. We're right on this one. It's everyone else that's wrong. Yeah. And that's a real danger, because, you know, obviously some of the challenges that the world faces are things like, you know, we've got Donald Trump, who's the president of the United States of America, who holds all the nuclear cards. Red button. Yeah, and it's like, this is a guy who is just, I don't even think we should talk about Trump, because it's so well trammeled, the tunnel of how much of an idiot he is. But
I think that's true, but I think because we've not spoken in a while, it's good to sort of like talk where we're both coming from. I mean, we're probably coming from a similar avenue when it's to that sort of thing, but people it's voting fresh to me and you when we're talking about it.
Well, people voting for Trump is exactly what you're talking about. Is people going, yeah, well, I don't really care about the statistics or anything like that. He's saying something that appeals to me on an emotive level that I can identify with. I feel a bit dispossessed. I feel a bit like things used to be better, even if they maybe didn't. I feel like that.
The good old days.
I feel like things are changing around me that I didn't expect or sign up for. He says he's going to fix that. I'm into that. And it's actually Brexit, as was well documented, comes from the same thing. It's like, oh, well, you know, Britain used to be better. We used to have an empire and all that. It's like, yeah, loads of not that good stuff about that. But let's not dwell on it. But no one's going to vote for that anyway. Oh, everyone's voted for it. Why did you vote for Brexit? Oh, because I wanted Britain to be powerful again. Right, and how is leaving the European Union going to achieve that? well, we're going to take our country back. Yeah, but from who? And the question basically boils down to, do you mean there's too many brown faces on the bus? And that's kind of what it comes down to is, yeah, there's too many Polish people doing joinery in my area, you know, and it's insanity. But you shouldn't dismiss it because it's someone's opinion, and you know everyone's got the same right to vote. And what has been proven is that if everyone just sits around and goes, oh, well, all my friends are liberal and left wing, and we're all right on, man, and we've all got the right idea, and we're going to change the world. It's like, yeah, but see all the people you don't know, they're all saying the same about what they believe, which is the opposite to what you believe. And that polarization is very, very dangerous. And I don't know really what the mechanism is that those polarizations get broken down. Yeah. Like, that's really a challenge.
Something happens. There's going to be a tipping point of some sort.
Yeah.
And it's going to lead to something, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Either way, too much either way is going to be not good.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found interesting was there's a documentary series on Netflix, and it's about Hitler and his group of sort of close circle.
You've just done that thing, you know, when you mention Hitler and you lose the argument. What's that called?
What, he was a good lad?
Oh my god.
It wasn't actually.
Godwin's law.
It wasn't actually Hitler that was the. No, that's not what I'm saying. No.
I think it's called Godwin's law. It's when if you say, oh well, you're being a Nazi, then that means you've lost the argument. Or yeah, it's just like you're being a Nazi, you know, man. It's like, okay, that's just like the most base level bad comparison.
I'll get into this in a minute.
Yeah, sorry.
But just it was a documentary series on what shaped Hitler becoming to where he was through the beer halls in Germany and Austria, and there was an older guy that sort of was the puppet master of him before that guy went on to die, but he then got him his close circle.
I like that he went on to die. Well, what did he go on to do next? He went on to die. Wow.
And that's all he was good for. He did what he was sent here to do. But at that time in Germany, there was a massive disparity there was a massive extreme left and a massive extreme right in Germany at that time. And I'm not saying that's representative of what's happening now, but it is eerily similar, and something is going to capitalize on that, whether it's something on the left or whether it's something on the right, and it's not going to be good either way.
No. I think, these extreme solutions to these problems as they arise are never really positive. Like, they don't achieve really anything good in the long run for the most part. If you know, and they tend to come out at times of, you know, economic hardship. People are out of work. They're angry at the world around them, and completely rightly so. You know, they're thinking, well, I used to have a job, now I don't have it. Whose fault is it? Better lash out at someone. And it's like, you know, everyone's least favourite online Labour pundit, Owen Jones, puts it quite nicely, is that people tend to direct their anger downwards, and they go, right, okay, well, something bad's happened to me. It must be the fault of the person on the next rung down on the social ladder. It must be the fault of the immigrant family up the street, or it must be the fault. In
comedian terms, it's punching down.
Punching down, it must be the fault of, you know, people on benefits. You know, basically all the people who are, you know, for one reason or another are at the bottom end of the societal spectrum. People don't go, you know, there's a bit of impotent fury about, oh well, Starbucks doesn't pay tax. Oh God, I'm not going to go. It's like, yeah, but you're
it's also shite.
It's I mean, the main reason you shouldn't go to Starbucks is it's fucking terrible.
But no, I know what you're saying.
But people don't. Maybe it's because they don't have the cognitive tools to think, right, well, how am I going to tackle this massive issue above me? Like, how am I going to tackle government corruption? How am I going to tackle massive tax evasion on a huge level by multinational corporations supported by the government? What can I as a person do about that? Nothing. What
it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming when you list those things. Yeah. And as someone on the street, you know, you and I, like, what can you actually do? Yeah. And it's at the point where it stops you from doing anything sometimes.
Yeah, you can't go and put a Molotov cocktail through a Starbucks window because that's a crime. You know, and that's not going to achieve anything good anyway.
Tried pretty hard to do that.
Yeah, but that's why that's a good example of, like, in a way, a noble cause, but kind of the methods aren't really going to work. And actually, the media's got a pretty good trick of just making them look puerile and stupid now. Do you know what I mean? Like when they turned up at...
But does violence beget violence? Is that how
if you are violent, are you going to have violence inflicted upon you?
If you're having something like cop violence against, you know, people, or, you know, Antifa are getting beat up by whoever that are trying to stop them, should you then be violent because you've experienced that? Is that the way to get your message across?
Well, you know, the biblical example is turn the other cheek, isn't it? But does that work? You know, because if you turn the other cheek and you just keep getting slapped.
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously are an MMA guy. If someone hits you in an MMA ring and you turn the other cheek, you're gonna get fucked up. That's not gonna work. So I don't know. It depends on whether you view it. You should.
But that is something that's based in combat and has rules that are based around that.
Yeah.
This world doesn't have that. You know, this is something we have to figure out ourselves.
So do you not have to engage with the world on the terms in which it engages with you?
But then you could say, like, oh, we should ban all Muslims because we've had, people bombing cities and all that.
I don't really know if that...
That's that kind of
I don't really know if
rise from that.
I don't really know if that correlation necessarily follows. I think...
But you could make that sort of jumping argument.
You could, yeah, but I mean, I think that you ignore if you look at that particular example, if you say, you know, ISIS has done this, that, the next thing, or people who represent ISIS have done this, that, and the next thing, then you fail to acknowledge the wider context of what we've done in those countries, which is horrible and dreadful. And
yes,
you know, we not individually are complicit in that because we said, okay, well, you know, oh my god, we said, well, we're not going to stop ourselves doing that. We've gone to Iraq. We're going to bomb Iraq. You know, 1 million people have marched in the streets against the Iraq war. Did it do anything? No, they still did it, and they still kept doing it. And then, you know, we've now intervened in Syria. Have we done anything positive there? No.
And that's a very, very, very grey area, Syria. There's so many like points of contact there that you can't just go in and indiscriminately bomb. You know,
it certainly doesn't need us going in and going, right, okay, well, we'll just drop a few bombs here, because then you're like, well, are we bombing Assad now? Because I thought before we were going, oh well, ISIS is the bad one, so we have to support Assad. Oh well, what about the Kurds? Oh well, you can't really support the Kurds because then Turkey will get. Yeah. It's like, well, the whole thing's pretty fucked. Yeah. But that's our fault as well. Yeah. You know, we in a way, you know, to a great extent, are responsible for that fucking shit shambles as well.
One of the greatest travesties is we go in these places and bomb the shit out of it and displace all these people and then refuse to take them in as refugees. You know.
And you know, people think that, you know, the family from Syria or the family from Somalia or wherever, it's like this grading of people that is really, really distasteful, of going, well, you know, I suppose if they're from Syria,
like
they're all right.
I have made that like comparison before. I've said, like, on degrees of, they don't really see themselves as, you know, like Muslim, but they see them as a Western Arabs. And I know what you're saying, like, it's not a good thing to sort of make those degrees like a person is a person, you know, and that's just how it should be, and you should take them on whatever they've done individually as well, you know. And that's how we should tackle it. Not just say, well, these Muslims are better than these Muslims because they don't think of themselves as, like, you know, that's not how it should work out.
He's bombed that place, but he's not, so, you know, it's kind of difficult.
I didn't say it in a past podcast on the way of saying, well, that's how we should take these in because they don't think of themselves as, you know, Muslim.
Yeah.
I didn't say it like that. I was playing sort of slightly devil's advocate when I was speaking to the guest at the time, so just to correct anybody I was thinking. Yeah.
What is that someone's got to go, right, well, we've got to take some responsibility for this and take the moral high ground and go, right, well, is the solution to, you know, ISIS trying to attack us to go and attack them and destroy, you know, kill their leader?
Like,
well, exactly. So it's a load of nonsense. So it's and ISIS actually knows this. It's like a kind of information war. What you're trying to do is they're trying to disturb British society and Western society enough that that all the Westerners go, oh well, fuck the Muslims, and then you get into a war of civilizations. Like, that's their stated aim. That's what
are they capitalizing on our ignorance as a nation as well? Do you think?
No, I think they're more simple in saying it's more straightforward. It's clever, but it's straightforward in the sense that they're saying, right, let's try and create some unrest here and actually turn the Westerners against us, so that then we have a legitimate case for saying, well, look, it's Westerners versus Muslims now, and that's it. So surely what we should be doing is, if we take in refugees and etc., which we absolutely should do, and have the resources, have the space, and have the time to do, we should be taking people in and showing them compassion, respect, integrating them into society, supporting them getting jobs, supporting them integrating with the wider community, all these kind of things, all these really positive things which people respond well to. And then you see not only the human beings that are actually coming over and their appreciation for the fact that, right, okay, wow, this is great, I'm getting to have a new start here and I'm seeing the benefits of British society. And it actually, in doing that, completely destroys the radicalist message, which is that the West is awful and they're a bunch of pigs. Because you go, well, actually, I've gone over to the UK, they've taken me in, and I feel like I'm at home there. And there's countless examples of this happening already. It's like people settling in the UK from Syria, I should add. Obviously, there's much more examples going further back. But from Syria, people settling and saying, oh, you know, everyone's been really, really welcoming. It's been superb. I feel great. I feel at home. I feel settled again. My family's safe. I feel great. And the other problem is that, you know, people in the UK, you know, not people in the UK, there's some people, and the right in the right wing in the UK kind of conflates anyone from Syria or anyone who is a Muslim with radical Islam, which is completely ridiculous, false dichotomy. Yeah. Because half the reason that if you're a refugee from Syria, half the reason you had to leave is because you weren't radical enough, or you were like, you know, you were apostate in the eyes of Islamic State. So I mean, we need to ultimately it comes to people need to treat people as people.
Do you think the thing that they're grinding up against, though, or us as a nation, is the infrastructure that we have in the society is based on capitalism? Do you think that's what they're butting heads with? Because if we take in all these people, you know, that's an influx that's going to put pressure on something that's very based on making money and trying to get better and better. But if we had the universal income, like would that be, you wouldn't be worried if there was like people from Syria or a different country moving down the street, because you're getting a basic level of income and a stress and a worry is taken off you.
Yeah, but again, it comes down to people have got that fear of, you know, am I going to lose my job because a Syrian guy's arrived down the street? And it's like, well, if your job's so insecure that just the first guy to get off a plane from war-torn Syria is going to take your job, you're really not very good at that job, are you? You need to take like...
But would basic income alleviate that?
I think universal basic income is a fabulous idea, and I would support it 100% being implemented. I think it's an absolutely wonderful idea, and the best thing about it is it's a weapon that destroys the right wing's argument of working doesn't pay. You know, see that argument of, if we need to incentivize the right wing, the Tory right wing, the Tory argument is that we need to incentivize people to work by cutting benefits. And we need to incentivize people to work by not making it pay more in benefits than it does to work. This destroys that immediately, because if everyone gets universal basic income, then any work you do on top of that, you will get paid for minus the amount of tax which you pay, which means you will always be better off working. So that, on a fundamental level, absolutely eliminates the central crutch of this justification for austerity. And that is absolutely fabulous and is really superb and would be amazing to see. And, you know, the only people who would be worse off under universal basic income are people who are extremely wealthy already, or people who are earning a good amount of money, and people who can afford to spare a bit more.
But they can afford to be slightly...
Yeah, but the problem is that it's very hard to take someone who has a lot of money, earns a lot of money, and say to them, you need to give away a bit of that. See the money you're used to making, you need to give away a bit of that.
But they can't...
I'm used to having it now. It's like, yeah, but it's not really fair. Yeah, but I'm used to having it. So that's kind of what you're going to come up against. But then
you can't interact within that society and not expect to sort of pay as part of it, you know, accordingly.
Yeah, but the mentality is, oh, well, I don't use anything that's taxable. It's like, well, did you go to a state school? Bingo. Okay. Fact one, did you walk down the street this morning? Bingo. So
one of the things that's obviously big on the news today is the royal wedding.
Superb.
And as one of my only friends that's probably a huge royalist, can you explain yourself?
Yeah, well, great. Good on them. Yeah, it's just, what can you say? No. It's just, if they want to get married, superb. I mean, if we must have a royal family ceremonially, then fine, let them get married. Does it cost the taxpayer loads of money? The facts get bandied about. I don't know. Probably does. That's obviously not fair, not good. There's better things we could be spending that money on. But, you know, ultimately, should we have a monarchy? Probably not. Should we kill the existing monarchy? No, definitely not. But just like phase them out. Do you know what I mean? No, just say, right, Charles is going to be king next. Let's just not do that.
I think it was even what's the one that's getting married today?
Harry.
I think it was him that even said that he wouldn't want to be king. He thinks they should be phased out. I think he said something to that effect. Obviously, when you're not going to be the next king, then you can say stuff like that freely, because that's why he was wearing Nazi bloody outfits. But I think that is something it's outdated, and it's not something that shows unity in a society. Like, it shows that there is a level of upper class that's different from the rest of the society, and it's not a good unification tool.
I mean, I actually get the people, the counter argument, if you want to do the devil's advocate thing, is the counter argument is that they're bringing loads of money in tourism. You know, as a British institution, it's something that's been part of our culture for thousands of years. So we should keep it. And I think that even if you did abolish the monarchy and say, we're not going to have a king and queen anymore, you're not doing anything to destroy all those hundreds and hundreds of years of history. You're still going to be able to have museums and still have Buckingham Palace.
But do you know what? Places. No one comes to the UK expecting to get a selfie with the Queen.
No.
Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're going to these places because they are...
A building, a location.
They have historical... Yeah, exactly. Maybe a bit more... are coming slightly because it is currently used, some sections. Ones that they can't even go to. Some sections are used by the royal family, but specifically the ones they're seeing is purely because it's history.
Yeah. It's another one of these things where you feel kind of like, almost like it's almost like a consensus where people are doing their utmost to outdo each other in terms of who is the most anti-royal, and I think that sticks in the craw a little bit because
I'm always aware when things like that come up that like you and maybe like Dave McCaffrey as well, like you always have like a weird, like, not weird, but you believe in these things that the way we're talking about it, but also you're cautious of a bunch of people like banning about the same thing, as
Herd
well.
mentality is quite dangerous, isn't it? And it's like, if everyone goes, oh well, it's a disgrace, it's a waste of money, it's like, once you've seen 10 people say that, I honestly don't want to see a 11th person say, oh, and it cost £300,000 for our dress. It's like, but...
And it can come off as contrarian and, what's the word? Like a hot take, when you're doing a hot take on something, what's the word I'm looking for? Transgressive, it's like that sort of thing. But I know where it comes from when you guys are saying that. It's just because, like you say, the herd mentalities can be...
But we spoke about the echo chamber thing earlier, and what's more, what's really echo chambery for me is that I only saw one person on my... I hardly check Facebook these days, but I only saw one person on my Facebook earlier who said, "Oh, what a beautiful ceremony," and that's all they said.
Was it a girl?
It was, yeah. And like everyone else was like going apoplectic with rage, and it ranged from kill the monarchy to what a waste of taxpayers' money, blah blah blah. It's like, but do you really do? If you flip that on its head, you go, right, okay, well, maybe it is a waste of taxpayers' money. But do you really demand accountability for that taxpayers' money anyway?
No.
Do you go and find out where your tax money goes? How much tax do you pay anyway? No. Do you know what I mean? People, this thing of taxpayers' money kind of gets my goat a bit because people go, oh, well, that's my money, that's taxpayers' money. It's like, listen, your couple £100 a month is not making a big difference to the state of the country. I'll be quite honest with you. So you need to balance up your chip on your shoulder.
It doesn't mean you have any less of a voice, though. Like,
you're allowed to have a voice, of course you are. But, I'm allowed to have a voice...
like the next person.
If I want to go and dress up like Prince Harry in a Nazi uniform and walk down the street, then I'm allowed to have that voice as well, that physical voice. But it doesn't mean that it's a good voice to have. I just think a bit more critical thought, and I think a lot of people's and it feels strange for me to say this, but a lot of people's quest these days is to be like the most right on that they can be. It's like, well,
super woke.
Yeah. What's like the most woke, progressive?
I mean, we have
liberal
friends
thing I can say. That are woke beyond belief.
I mean, there's some people that have literally gone off the liberal deep end.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, you need to question all these things, because if you and all your wee pals just go, right, well, oh, this is bad, that's terrible, oh, I think it's really terrible, oh, I think it's super, super terrible, you just get in a competition to see who can express their concern in the most egregious way. Whereas what you really need to be doing is looking at and trying to balance out all the different parts of the argument and go, right, okay, well, maybe people see it this way, but maybe you could see it that way. And that's debating, isn't it? Like, debating is actually, if me and you got given some argument that maybe neither of us agreed with, but we had to fight that corner anyway. And that's how we're going to find a bit of progress. If you just go to one end of the spectrum and go, right, well, that's me, I'm stuck there, I'm not deviating from there, if that moves, I'm following it.
Do you feel like it's a tool used to keep us apart, though? Like, that's somehow been utilised by someone or something, some entity, some force in the world that's using that to keep us apart? Like, have you seen the new Childish Gambino video?
Yeah.
Amazing. I thought it, like, I was like, oh, this is going to be terrible. All the hype, I'm wary of, like, mass people saying, "Oh, this is brilliant."
Yeah.
Watched it. I thought it was brilliant. It's not as deep as people think. It wears its like its sort of hidden meanings on its cuff.
Well, see, I don't know about that because I kind of watched it and thought, right, okay, yeah, I get the like it goes from the upbeat bit to the dark bit and the guy shoots blah blah blah. But there's some of the bits some of the references I didn't get until I read about it, and I think that's good that it had some depth that you had to research.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that someone with a bit more knowledge than me on.
But it was
American
multi-layered.
history. Yeah,
it was multi-layered.
I think it had some layers. Like the fact that they're doing. Is it not some sort of African dance?
The dance,
they're doing when they're doing that coordinated dance, and he's doing like the Jim Crow stance when he shoots him as well.
And he's also wearing the sort of, was it the Confederate pants?
Right. Okay.
That's what the pants are.
So there is like there is some sort of layers to it, you know. And I think that's interesting. But again, that was another thing where you could kind of go the other way and go, right, well, everyone's saying, yeah, I'm a white guy from Scotland. I think this is really amazing for racial equality in America. It's like, well, are you qualified to speak about that? Maybe you're entitled to have an opinion, and I'm sure we all have the same opinion, which is that, yeah, we shouldn't, you know, racial inequality is bad, and the police shooting black people is terrible, and it shouldn't exist. Yeah. Is a bunch of white people from Scotland going, yeah, man, that's right on. Is that going to fix anything? No.
But, like, you can say, like, you're using those terms like white person from Scotland. Like, if you couldn't say that, it's a touchy subject when you say you couldn't get away with it being the reverse by saying, oh, it's a bunch of black people from America saying what we can do in, you know, Scotland.
Well, I just think it's a bit remote, and
I don't think we should revert to.
What's the phrase they use to describe it? I think I'm hesitant to use this phrase because it is used a bit by sort of right-wing commentators. But is it called virtue signalling?
Yeah.
Is it where you sort of say, how can I nail my colours to the mast of progressive ideals? And look,
it seems to be quite prominent in Scotland as well. I don't know why. Is it just because we're
it's because you know people from Scotland? Yeah.
But I just feel like it's more like it's Moorish here.
Oh, it's Moorish, so Moorish. But yeah, I don't know. It's difficult because, you know, ultimately what we all want is like a liberal and progressive society, and ultimately a society where people can do their own thing, and they're not gonna be impeded upon doing that, right? And people are not gonna be, you know, stigmatized or picked upon or picked apart on the basis of the colour of their skin or their race or their sex or their sexual identity or any of these things. But I think where it becomes a bridge you have to cross is that if you're going, well, does it start to impact other people? Does it start to force its way onto other people? And that's the difficulty. I think anyone can agree, and my personal opinion is like, let people do whatever they want, and as long as like it doesn't have a negative opinion on anyone else, then cool. I think that's really what I kind of.
So to take it onto the Childish Gambino video and what he was showing, obviously, is the shootings, and obviously yesterday there was the shootings in Texas. And this is obviously a real problem, an issue now, you know, and that's what leads on from what you're saying is this is something that someone's going and harming someone else with and it's an institution that is perpetually lobbying to keep guns in the hands of Americans just so it can stay in power, you know.
Well, what they needed was if more people had guns, then less people would have died because they would have been able to shoot the shooter, obviously. I think we all can understand the common sense logic behind that. But obviously, it's ridiculous. Again, we are kind of removed from it, so we can't understand how dominant that idea of it being tied to your rights to carry a gun. And people really do think, you know, in America, it seems that they really do identify with that being a central feature of their civil liberties.
It's the pillar of their civilization.
The ability to have a gun. And unfortunately, the problem is if you have a gun, eventually someone will get shot with a gun. But
like,
they're not obviously willing to address that to any great extent.
I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast quite a bit, and there's one thing that he constantly says that really infuriates me, and you probably don't listen as much as I do, but he's I
listened to one the other week actually.
Which one was it?
He had debatable right wing commentator Jordan Peterson on.
Oh right, okay.
And I listened to that one.
Would you call him right wing?
debatable right-wing content. I think he's in. We can come back to Jordan Peterson in a minute. I think he's an interesting.
I wanted to speak to you about it because I want to get your opinion on it because I know we have friends that are very, very sure about them.
Yeah.
Him. He said like it's not a gun issue; it's a mental health problem, which is true.
Yeah. But
at the same time, you're arming people and giving people access with mental health issues.
Yes.
To guns, and he said. There's like, if someone runs someone over with a car, they don't go banning cars, which is disingenuous because guns are designed to kill. Cars are designed to get you from A to B.
Transport, exactly.
It's not the same. It's completely disingenuous. And it gets
like
repeated a lot on different podcasts that I've heard.
You could beat me to death with this lamp, so you should ban lamps. It's like, well, that doesn't really work because actually this lamp's function is to provide light, which is something that's doing adequately and very, very well at the moment. And they're only a £5 from IKEA, so shout out to IKEA.
How do you know?
Because I got one last week. That's my favourite lamp.
Sorry, I'm going to have to pause. Some funny comments on the YouTube.
I know.
Robert Gibson or fuck to Simpson.
I know. I've obviously come across very wrongly if that's the way it's come across. But I don't know. We're getting sacked on Monday, so that's good.
I think you've done a fair representation of
I don't know, a balanced version of my take.
Yeah, so you said you'd watched Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson recently. He's a bit of a pariah, I guess.
It's a very interesting, divisive figure, isn't he? Because it's interesting with Jordan Peterson because I came to him, never having heard his name before, haven't heard anything about him, and I was listening to, of all things, the Russell Brand podcast, right? And Jordan Peterson was on it, and they got into a conversation. And I thought, this guy seems quite interesting. He's got some interesting things to say. Some of it, obviously, you're thinking, it's a bit off the scale, a bit strange.
He's an old white professor,
Yeah, and you have to be aware that, you and I sitting talking about Jordan Peterson is very much playing into the hands of anyone who says he just appeals to white, cisgendered males. But having said that, there is certain things you can... That I found from listening to that initial Russell Brand podcast and investigating a few things afterwards that you couldn't help but really identify as being, well, that's fair enough. That seems true. In my opinion, anyway.
I think just to sort of bring it to what I was saying before, I think this is something that could be filed under anti-intellectualism, is how he's been treated as well. I guess from a lot of people from the left who are sort of. Anyway, continue what you're...
And you've got to be careful as well, because obviously, for myself, I consider myself pretty firmly somewhere on the left side of the spectrum. Jordan Peterson pretty clearly identifies himself as seeing what he calls the radical left as being, bad. And I think that he identifies himself as being, working from a scientific basis with varying degrees of evidence for that.
Probably like to see himself in the middle,
Yeah, I think centrist is probably somewhere in the centre is probably fair to say for that. But there are certain bits of advice which you can imagine if they were given to lost kind of youths with not much going on. If you're a young white guy and you're like
incel guys, do you think that type of person?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be as kind of pejorative as that. Just general advice that if you get your life in some sort of an order, like if you look at what's going on in your own life and go, right, okay, this bit's chaotic, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Maybe if I try and fix the stuff that I have some influence over, then I can start working towards improving some of the bigger things, right?
But you have to start with yourself.
You have to start with yourself.
Fundamentally.
And the key, the big message that seemed to make sense was that if you start with yourself and you try and make some improvements to yourself, then that'll work in your benefit. And really, I think that you would be mad to say that you didn't agree with that at all, and that there was no validity to that. And there are a lot of groups of people who don't get the chance to take those opportunities, because even if they get themselves sorted out, then there's still a vast amassed weaponry keeping them in their place. But if you're like a white guy or a guy or a white person or etc., etc., you don't really have any obstacle to you. You shouldn't wallow in your own misfortune and go, I don't see where my place is in the world. Take a wee bit of responsibility for yourself and go, right, okay. And it's interesting how he talks about, on the Russell Brand thing, he spoke kind of at length about how people follow kind of like archetypes, and they sort of fall into like archetypes.
The hero archetype.
Yeah, and they model themselves on like the hero archetype or like the tragic archetype or all these kind of things. So I've not really seen... The thing that really confused me with Jordan Peterson, I would have to say I'm 50-50 on him. Like, half of what he says, I go, oh, that seems to make a bit of sense. And half of what he says, I go, that's a bit questionable. Do women enjoy being inferior to men? It was like you can go, well, of course, that's ridiculous. Yeah. But actually the point he's getting at is not that. And then every attempt to sort of stitch him up, has not really worked. Because he's kind of going, well, look, here's the facts for what I've said. And I'd want to talk to you about it.
And obviously,
the Channel 4 interview,
the main one,
the famous Channel 4 interview is like just ludicrous, because it does just look like a hatchet job. It looks like they're trying to make him say something that he hasn't said, and he comes out and says, well, I've never actually said that. What I said was this, and here's my opinion. Yeah. So what you're trying to say is, well, and I really don't want to bang on about it too much, because... But
some people are really good at being articulate and talking well, and that can make them look like they're talking sense, but not necessarily true all the time, or obviously there's people in history that were amazing auditors and were completely terrible people and had strange ideas. Yeah. So that is something that you shouldn't take as like, well, just because he's speaking really well, he must be in the know. But he is in the know of certain things, and he's like he's the head of psychology at the University of Toronto, which is no small deal. And
I think, again, there is a danger of like a cognitive bias for me and you sitting going, he does know about some stuff because it makes sense for us, because the whole
But it's the human condition. It makes sense to everyone, you know. It doesn't matter if we're white or whatever, you know. There are basic fundamental things that as a human you go through and recognise as patterns as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of up in the air with it because I'm kind of torn because sometimes I see what's been said and go, right, okay, that makes a bit of sense. Some of it is a bit base level and asinine, like, you know, if you have order and structure in your life will be better. But some people will never have had that message in their life. And I think that's not a bad thing for, you know, young people to receive. And in particular, you know, if you're a young man who feels a bit lost and listless and doesn't really have anything going on in his life and wonders what your place in life is, well, I think it's not actually a bad message to say to them, right, guys, get your own house in order first before you start thinking about anything else outside of that. And if you want good things to happen to you, then make sure you are going out and looking at things with the right outlook, certainly. And I think I could certainly benefit from... I could say that I've benefited from this myself because I have, like... You know, I used to be, ironically, when I was younger, quite cynical and quite sort of... didn't really look at things with a positive what might happen attitude.
It seemed like it was like a defence mechanism a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's like when you're a young guy, you're trying to prove yourself and you're kind of doing the, like, sort of... chest beating, you know.
But you had an amazing gift as well. Like, you were an amazing guitarist, and obviously you grew up maybe academic as well. So it was the sort of, I don't know, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but obviously the sort of shyness of being a teenager and then having this amazing like ability to play guitar like that, and it's going to have a weird effect on your mind, you know. And
I think you compensate for that and you justify everything that doesn't go your way by being bitter about it and complaining and moaning and all the rest of it, whereas actually the biggest lesson I've probably learned from being at uni and since then, like doing my job that I currently do and moving city and everything, would be that, you know, if you do go into things with a more positive outlook and you think, right, okay, well, here's the outcome that I want, and you focus on that in the future, then you'll work towards that both consciously and unconsciously. You'll go, right, okay, here's what I want to achieve. Things aren't that great right now. This could be better, that could be better, that could be better. Will you have some faith that it's going to get better? Yeah. Will you be working towards those things? Yes. Will you try and put structures in place that those things will work? And look, again, we're in a lucky position in that we are like two like guys who've not really had huge problems in their life to overcome, and you know, we're white men, so we've not had any real biases or prejudices towards us, which is fair enough. But that still doesn't mean to say that everyone's going to land in your lap. And there's a bit of a... I
mean, there's relative struggle there as well, you know. Growing up in high school, you know, as a teenager as well is difficult for anyone, you know. There's all relative struggles in there. What we're saying about Peter Jordanson, I always get... I end up saying like Jordan Peterson or something.
So Jordan
like
Peterson,
the type of person that he appeals to is the one that can be seen as a threat to society, is that the sort of upper middle class white male who's young and sort of has no effect on the world, you know, and has no outlet. And then these are people who could be like the shooter in Texas. These are the type of people that go out and then do these type of things. These are the people that go out and then become part of incel, you know.
I think I would pick you up on one thing that is that I don't think it's a class thing at all. I don't think it's like upper middle class or anything like that. I think
not a cause, it's just an effect.
But like, class has kind of come out of this sort of debate now. Do you know what I mean? Because class isn't really so much of a...
It's mostly middle
big
class
thing
people.
As it used to be. Yeah, like everyone's kind of broadly clumped together, and like in the US and in the UK, right? So I don't think class kind of comes out of it, and that's actually one of the big things that's changed about the political spectrum, is that it used to be on the case that the left wing was all about class struggle. It was like, right, okay, the working class are going to fight to overthrow the ruling class, and then the working class should be able to work for and run the country or run society for the benefit of everyone, right? And that's fair enough, and that's good. That's a really virtuous aim. But now class doesn't really come into it so much, and because class doesn't exist in the same way, like it's not as acute. Like you don't have like blue collar, white collar executive thing quite so much, you know. There is still an element of that.
But if I was to describe that person to you and use those words, you would know exactly what it was meaning.
But I just don't know if it's not valid, because people identify themselves along different lines now, you know.
Well, we know that,
but they identify themselves along different lines to class lines, and it used to be that the most important sort of lever in society, or the most important like cleavage between like two different sections of society would be the class. You know, it would be like if you're working class, you would be distinct and different from middle class. Whereas now, if you're on the left, it's like, well, you know, that's an element of it. And do you want to increase inequality? Do you want to increase equality, and do you want to diminish inequality? Yes. Do you want to fight an economic fight to make sure that society is more balanced? Yes. But then there's a whole element which is separate to that, which you have to be engaged with as well, and you have to be sensitive to, and you have to be aware of, which, you know, is obviously a new side of it as well.
I know.
But and that's a good thing, and for the record, you know, people should be able to, in that sense, if we're talking about like gender politics, identity politics, all this kind of thing. Again, people can do whatever they want. Like people can identify as absolutely whatever they want, and they can do whatever they want, as far as I'm concerned.
But people say that, and it's still an issue, though. Like what? Like not for the people that are not taking part in it. For the people that are taking part of sort of trying to group together and say, "Well, you must hear our whatever," you know.
And but I think you should hear it. I think if you know, if someone's saying, "Look, this is an issue that I experience in my daily life," then people should be sensitive to it and should respond to it. But
should you not hold it with the same sort of reservedness that you hold to people that say that they have, you know, maybe depression or something like that? You should have that sort of slight reserved and not jump to just upright believing or whatever. You know, you should hold something. A bit of skepticism, not skepticism because that's a strong word, but you know what I'm saying, like just not be fully like, well, yeah, that's okay.
I think it's just not as, it shouldn't be the primary driver of debate on the left wing. No. Like it shouldn't be the primary point of discussion that people are obsessed with talking about, because ultimately, you know, it is an issue, but it is a concern. If people don't respect you for who you are, that's bad and is really, really, you know, shocking and shouldn't be tolerated. But by the same token, you can't expect that it's going to be the main issue that drives societal change, because it's not, because it's something that only affects you, and it's something that affects maybe a small group of people that you know, and that's, again, that is what it is, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean that, where it gets problematic is if people are getting like pilloried for accidentally using the wrong pronoun, or all these sort of like tired examples that get drawn out, right? If someone asks you, can you refer to me as they, you should say, yes, of course. Can you refer to me as he? Yes, of course. Can I use this toilet? Use whatever toilet you want. I do not care.
But there should be that mutual sort of meeting of respect, where you have to, like, not you have to, but it should be sort of a reciprocal, mutual thing that you say, look, you know, this is what I'm going by. Oh, well, doesn't matter. I'll call you it. The
one that's the only one thing that is like a problem is if someone just doesn't know and they make the mistake of saying, oh, you know, what are you doing in that toilet? It's like, you know, it's like, that is such a stupid example that like we're laughing at it, but that becomes like a huge flashpoint, and that's actually destructive for everyone, because it makes if it's you who's at the center of that storm and you're going, right, okay, I'm really, really upset about this incident happening, right? Then it sort of has a negative impact on you as well, because everyone who's involved in the debate's going, well, I don't see what the fuss is, and you're going, well, there is a big deal, because I really was, you know, offended by it. I found it really, really difficult to deal with. I found it really troublesome, and that's, again, that's fine. If you want, if that's troublesome, then it's a problem and it should be addressed. But if it's literally just a case of, you know, the transgressor saying, oh, sorry, I literally had no idea, I was just asking, and then that's not accepted, and they get basically bullied and hounded from there. That's a problem.
It's not good.
It's not good, and it's not good for anyone to feel like that, I don't think.
And it has to be something that's sort of sorted and adjusted to on both sides. You know, there has to be some on equal sides. You know, it just can't be this like, oh, stiff upper lip and be like, no, you have to do this because this is how I feel. Like there has to be some sort of integration of both.
I mean, really, it's dead simple. Is that if you say, when do you ever stand next to someone and refer to the person as he or she anyway? You'd use their name, right? So anyway, but if you did do that and you made a mistake and the person corrected you, you should take it with good grace and go, I'm really sorry, I'll use the correct pronoun from now on. And the toilet thing is so simple. It's like, well, why don't we just have a bunch
universal
of cubicles that
universal
anyone can use. Yeah.
toilets anyway. Like
Yeah.
I always find that so stupid that you have separate. I mean, there's
Yeah.
people that can like, oh, I don't want like my little girl getting spied on by some pervert. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that would happen
But it's
anyway.
like your
Do you
little
think
boy
a
might
wall-
get spied on by a pervert as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's crazy. But all you need to have is like a row of cubicles and just a sign that says toilets, and it's fine. No one cares about that. But
it becomes such a point of contention, though. It's like,
I mean, the one that was getting discussed on. Did you watch Genderquake on Channel 4?
no, I don't watch normal television.
Oh, not a conformist, yeah. Well, I watched it because I thought, well, I'm quite interested to see, like, I was interested to see the spectrum of opinion. And, you know, to be fair to Channel 4, they'd pulled together quite a spectrum. You know, there's some people who were meant to be ostensibly on the right wing side, and there was some people who were meant to be very much on the progressive side, and there was every aspect of the gender spectrum was covered. So in that sense, it was really good. It was an inclusive discussion. But one of the things that was discussed was, well, you know, I find using a gendered toilet horrific, right? I was like, well, okay, so the solution to that is, well, let's just have genderless toilets. And I think that most people would go, well, that's fine, just have a load of cubicles and a load of hand basins, and that's fine, you know. Then it's just like a normal room, but you go into a separate room to
It becomes a non-issue, you know.
Yeah, it becomes a non-issue. But then it became like a deeper thing, which is that, you know, if you're a trans woman and you want to use the women's toilets, is that then a problem? Or do you want to use the men's toilets, and is that a problem? It's like, well, no, you can use whatever you want. Yeah. Again, but I
But
don't
to
know.
blow it up to a bigger issue, like say there's this transgendered woman who was transitioned from a man and is in New Zealand and became like part of the was it the powerlifting?
Right.
So, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they're actually talking about this as well.
And then went on to just completely smash all the records as a trans woman at this event, and then was picked for the New Zealand Olympic team. Yeah. But then went on to break her elbow and retired. I think that was a ploy to maybe get out of the whole situation. Not the breaking, but used that as a sort of, well, I'm finished with the sport. Yeah. But that becomes an issue. Like in sports, where do you sort of draw the line? Should it be just open and free to do like fluidly go from one to the other in those sort of things?
Well, you'd have to say in the sporting arena, you would have to say, well, no, you have to go off your birth gender or your birth sex. I'm sorry, because you know you can't. I don't know how to say this without just coming out as it is.
It's tough though.
Yeah, like you can't say you can't deny that there are biological differences between men and women. Like men are bigger and stronger and broader and have, you know,
the advantages of being exposed to testosterone all their life.
And this is why men and women have always competed in different areas anyway. And the example that people, you know, always discuss is Caster Semenya, the South African athlete who is a woman. They're like, well, she's got really high levels of testosterone, so she shouldn't be allowed to compete. It's like, but she is a woman, though. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter which way you cut it. She naturally was born a woman and has high levels of testosterone. But that's what it is. Whereas if you've, you know,
still on the low end of a male scale, I think, is it?
Yeah. If you were born a man and you went, and that was, you were born into the wrong body, and you went, right, okay, I'm going to go through the procedure and the reassignment to become a woman, then if you're still going to have the testosterone levels of a man, it's not really fair on the women who you're competing alongside. And in fact, the issue of how those women feel is not really being considered. Because fair enough, you might have always identified as a woman, but is it right that...
And we know how competitive some people can be. To say that there wouldn't be some people that would then go and do something like that to be more like that could win in a women's or men's division somehow.
Well, I think that's something. A bit of a jump, isn't it?
Of course,
it's quite a big.
Of course, but to say it wouldn't happen is sort of maybe it's not impossible that someone would do that if they were really, really, you know, like this guy. You know, he probably seen it as an easy sort of transition because he could then compete in the women's weightlifting because he's had this advantage of being a man all his life and then being a woman. It wouldn't be something that'd be like.
Having said that, there are plenty of women that could lift me and you on the table without a problem. So shout out to them also, because
of course,
that's definitely the case.
But these are like small. These are times when it happens, but it's not going to happen all the time. But it becomes a big issue because it is something that we've never came across. And when it comes up, it's like, well, ignites discussion, and rightly so,
Yeah.
because we have to figure this out as a society.
Yeah.
You know, to make it fair for everyone involved.
I think that's really the big crucial point, isn't it? Is that, you know, society is always going to progress, and that's good, and that's what drives society, and that's what we support, is that society is pushed forward. But the important thing is it does have to be a discussion when it comes up, and you have to find the best way forward. And, you know, people have always fought for the rights in all different areas throughout, you know, particularly throughout the last couple of 100 years, and they should be supported in continuing to do that. But it is always and should be discussed and brought into the mainstream. And now we've got the thing, you know, we've got the ability to discuss it on a wide range of forums, and we can discuss it in real life, we can discuss it on TV, discuss it on Facebook, we can, you know, there's a lot of avenues, Twitter, there's a lot of avenues for people to get their opinions out there. So I think that is really the important thing, is all these things, you know, they should all be accepted, recognised and pushed forward, but everyone should discuss it and see how it beds into society.
And not create language to sort of shut down discussion. Like, there's a lot of people like calling everyone a Nazi. You know, these are terms to sort of stop discussion. You know, if someone calls you a Nazi when you're talking about something, I'd like immediately be like speechless. You know, like it's something like what? Like it's totally, they're used to be divisive, these types of words. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's the extremes of the argument again, isn't it? Ideally, you would like converge in the middle and reach some sort of consensus that everyone's happy with, and that's the sign of a good discussion. Yeah. Whereas actually, if the discussion diverges and it goes in two different directions and people don't reconcile their opinions at all, there's no point in you having the discussion, or arguably, did the discussion even take place? Yeah. Because really, if you're in a proper discussion with someone, they put forward opinion A, you put forward opinion B, and you go, right, okay, where's the common ground in what we're saying to each other here? Yeah. Where are the where's the meat on these bones that we can pick apart? Where actually, if you just go, well, no, I'm right, you're wrong, that's a really, really bad position to start, and a really, really poor position to start your debate from. Because if you're not willing to climb down even one step, then you're never going to meet the other person, because presume they're in the same situation. Yeah. You need to, you know, that's what people need to bear in mind. Yeah. You know, everyone's about concession, isn't it?
So we got pretty deep there. I think it's almost been 3 hours.
Whoa!
I know. Yeah, we'll probably just finish up there. Like I usually finish up with a couple of questions. Your favourite piece of music of all time, or current piece of music?
Favourite piece of music of all time? That's tough. Current favourite, I'm going to say, I'm wearing this Drab Majesty t-shirt, so I'm going to say that this Californian sort of cold wave band, Drab Majesty, I'm just absolutely loving them. Right, so I found them last year just on Spotify, saw them earlier this year, and they're amazing. Yeah. So I would say
Drab
Majesty, and the album's called The Demonstration, and that's like blowing my mind. Okay. So that's really, really
good. Favourite movie you've seen recently or all time?
Do you know what? I don't know. I'm gonna pass on that one. I'm not a big movie guy, so I don't have really strong forthright opinions. I really like just terrible shit movies. So.
Okay, Legally Blonde. We'll say that.
Fine.
Which you are, pretty much.
Of course, yeah. Legally Strawberry Blonde.
Favorite book? Apart from the Holy Bible.
Oh, the Lord Jesus Holy Bible. Favorite book. I don't know if it's my favourite, but it's one that I read recently that's really, really good, which is the Guantanamo Diary by a guy called Mohammed Oud Slahi, which is like a guy's, literally his diary is excerpts from his diary from being in Guantanamo Bay. And it's really, really interesting. And it's all redacted as well. Like all the bits of it are redacted from what the US government would release. So I would certainly recommend that. I don't know if it's my favourite book of all time, but it's a really, really good read.
And is it from someone that was guilty of something, or was he...
No. So
completely innocent.
He was stitched up basically. Wow. Yeah, exactly. And like he got the whole thing, like he got taken on a plane, blindfolded, put in the hold, and like all this for like thousands of miles, and then end up at Guantanamo. And it talks about like his relationship with the guards and all this kind of thing, and
torture methods.
And and how they would like interrogate him, and how he would be kept in all these different places. 'Cause he wasn't just in Guantanamo.
Were you allowed to keep a diary when you're in a place like that?
Well, apparently so. I think that one of the real things about these sort of like situations is that the prisoners do develop bonds with the guards to some extent. Because again, it's like for all the
Stockholm syndrome type thing.
Well, it's more like, you know, it could be construed as that, but I think it's more like for all the we're good, they're bad. It's like people are people at the end of the day,
Okay.
and you know, people can always recognise a bit of themselves in someone else, you know, and that's really what. See, when people, when you meet each other and you have an initial impression of someone, you either like them or don't like them, or you could grow to like them. And I think that's the same regardless of what scenario you find yourself in. And if you go into a situation going, I'm going to hate this person, yeah, you're probably not going to like them very much. Whereas if you're like, well, I've not got anything to lose from discussing my plight with this person, then, you know.
And most people could probably go into that situation saying you're going to hate that person.
Yeah. But it's like if you're in Guantanamo anyway and you think, well, I'm not getting out of here, then you might as well go, so this is the only guy I'm going to get to talk to ever, possibly, or this month, or whatever, then you might as well, you'd be crying out for that human interaction. And that's the thing that sends people mad, isn't it? Is like solitary confinement is the worst environment for a human being to be in, because people crave interaction. So if you're in that situation and you get some interaction, even with someone who is your oppressor and your captor and ostensibly the enemy you're fighting against, then you would probably still find some common ground, is what seems to come out.
And your favourite quote?
The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly, which is a Nietzsche quote.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What quote. And was that like from? Where's it like? It just like.
It's one of the aphorisms. Okay. So, with regards to what it relates to, you could relate it to anything. You think about the content of that, you could.
So the higher we soar, the
higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. So, I take it as, don't worry about other people's bitternesses and concerns. If you know you're doing the right thing, go in the right direction. Have strength in that and keep doing it.
Sweet, man. On that note, that was awesome. Do you want to plug anything?
No, other than obviously the shop, which we plugged at the start fairly extensively. So guitar.co.uk, or come in because we're nice people. And yeah, I'm not going to do any the band thing or that. I'll put some links in the YouTube video.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Superb.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on. Awesome. It was awesome.
Brilliant. Great.
See you guys.